How are you today, David?
Good, thank you. We've been getting my mother's massive mansion in Island Falls ready. We had 7 leaks underneath the camp that had to be dealt with by a plumber for 2 full days.
Ooh.
And now the furnace won't run. And other than that, everything's good. And it's cold up here.
Sure.
Bummer. Good morning.
So I have the pellet stove all ready to go.
Morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock and we have a quorum, so we're going to start our Judiciary Committee meeting today. Members of the public, we have a morning full of bill hearings. We're going to do public hearings from now until 12:30, and we'll hopefully get through all of our work. And but regardless, we will complete our work by 12:30 today. And we usually start our committee meetings with member introductions, and we'll launch into those right now. And Representative Hagan, would you like to start with your introduction?
Sure. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm David Hagan. I hail from Hamden and Newburgh, House District 101. Thank you.
And Representative Thorne? We're not able to hear you.
Always do that just to keep Sophie on the quiet side. My name is Jim Thorne. I represent District 103, which is Carmel, Herman, and a portion of Etna up here in beautiful Penobscot County.
Thank you. Representative Sheehan?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Erin Sheehan, and I represent Biddeford's beautiful House District 12.
Thank you. Representative Moriarty?
Good morning, all. I'm Steve Moriarty from District 45, which is all of Cumberland and part of Gray.
Representative Babbage?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Christopher Babbage. I represent House District 8, privileged to represent the people of Kennebunk.
Representative Evangelos?
Morning, everyone. Sunny day out there, but a little blustery. Jeffrey Evangelos, House District 91, and I reside in Friendship.
Thank you. Representative Libby, are you able to activate your video and introduce yourself?
Briefly. Hi, I'm Laura Libby. I represent District 64, which is part of Auburn and all of Minot.
Thank you. And
I
Representative?
will be here for most of the morning, but off camera unless I have a question.
Thank you. Representative Harnett?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to everyone. My name is Tom Harnett. I represent House District 83, which includes the city of Gardner, where I live, and the town of Farmingdale. It's nice to see everyone again.
Thanks. Representative Moriarty, did I call on you already?
You did.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm losing track. And I'd like to introduce our legislative analyst, Peggy Reinsch, and also our committee clerk, Susan Panett. And I'm Ann Carney. I represent Senate District 29, which includes South Portland, Cape Elizabeth, where I reside, and a little bit of Scarborough. And with that, I am going to bring over our first bill sponsor today. We'll open the public hearing on LD 32. Oh, and I did want to let members of the public know, and also to remind committee members, public hearings are our opportunity to hear from and ask questions of members of the public with regard to committee discussion and evaluation of bills. We'll save that for our work session on the bills. And with that, I'll bring over the bill sponsor, Senator Trey Stewart. Please bring Senator Stewart over. Thank you, Soupy.
It looks like my video, the only option I had was to unmute. I did not have an option for video.
Okay, hang on one second because we
Sure.
can fix that. And Supi, could you please give me co-hosting authority as well? Can you try Senator Stewart again to activate your video?
I actually don't even have that button.
You don't
The
have
only
the
button I
button.
have is mute.
Okay, and I'm not finding a way to do that right now, which is
Why
a
don't I
shame.
just rejoin real quick?
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, let's see if this works this time. Oh, there we go.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Appreciate the technical assistance on that one.
You're welcome.
So this bill was originally scheduled for back in February. So the testimony is a little bit, I wrote it a couple months ago. So there's a couple of places that might appear weird, and that's why. So good morning, Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Judiciary. I'm Senator Trey Stewart, and I proudly serve the people of Senate District 2, which includes Southern Aroostook and parts of Northern Penobscot County. I'm here today to present LD 32, an act regarding participation in public proceedings. Late last year, Maine Municipal Association approached me on submitting this important piece of legislation. As you all know, this past year has presented several challenges in conducting the business of state government, as well as local, municipal, and other government and quasi-government organizations across our state and nation. At the forefront of this legislature, we unanimously passed rules which change the way this organization conducts its business on behalf of the people of Maine, and have been operating under those rules since January. While I have felt that the changes to shift to allow for remote participation should have been made a long time ago as technology improved, the government has lagged behind in several of these changes. That all changed in March of last year when the coronavirus forced this shift among many of these organizations if they wanted to be able to meet or conduct business at all. I was glad to see that the legislature finally adopted this change to allow for remote participation, particularly for the sake of my own constituents who live in rural Maine. Historically, if someone wanted to testify before this body, they would have to take the day off from work and from their lives, drive upwards of 4 hours one way for roughly 3 minutes of testimony, and then make the long drive home. Obviously, this was a cost prohibitive problem for many individuals. Thankfully, such is no longer the case. I find that this to be one of the few silver linings of the pandemic. Locally, as we struggle to find ways to engage the public in our own communities, a similar approach would allow for remote participation will do much to advance this effort. While people may not be willing to spend an evening away from their families and homes after a long day of work, the option to Zoom in is one that will advance participation and preserve public health. Sorry, my dog's making a lot of noise this morning. Public health efforts as we round the bend of the pandemic. Indeed, if this approach is good enough for the legislature to ensure participation and legitimacy of our sacred process of democratic representation, it ought to be good enough for our local governments as well. For most entities, this will seem like a no-brainer and a change that comes naturally and obviously as we have adjusted to public health measures during the pandemic. However, we still need to ensure that our statutes are not unnecessarily penalizing local governments for trying to do the right thing, which is why this measure is before you today. Representatives from the MMA are here with us today and will be able to provide their testimony shortly, as well as answer the technical questions about this bill, and I thank them for their work on behalf of Maine. I've also been contacted by representatives from the Maine Education Association and Disability Rights Maine, who each had some technical concerns with the bill's first draft. Together, we've worked out an amendment of the bill, which is attached behind my written testimony. And I also want to thank the MEA, MMA, and DRM for making themselves available to participate with us today at this hearing. Thank you, members of the committee, for your careful consideration of the support measures that will allow local governments and organizations to move into the 21st century, protect public health measures, and ensure that, there it is, ensure good government operations and increase public participation. Happy to answer any questions anybody has at this time.
Thank you very much, Senator Stewart. Committee members, are there any questions? Go ahead, Representative Evangelos.
Good morning, Senator. How are you doing up there today?
Well, we just got whacked with a nice bit of snow, so that's
I heard.
kind of a bummer.
I heard it was even.
Outside of that, we're doing all right. Thanks.
So, and I am joking around a little with you, but regarding the dogs, I did want to let you know that Representative Thorne's dog has attempted to vote twice prior to he casting his vote, and the dog didn't go along with him. You have any response to that?
Well, we sell some pretty good Republican dogs up here in the county, so I'd encourage anybody to come on up and see what we've got to offer.
All right, thanks.
Representative Harnett.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Very quick question, Senator Stewart. Thank you for bringing this bill forward. The amendment that's attached to your testimony, that completely replaces the original bill. Am I right?
That if the committee is willing to adopt it, that is the sort of compromise proposal between the three interest groups I listed in my testimony: MMA, MEA, and DRM. DRM's concerns were really more in regards to a drafting error that inadvertently precluded some folks that may have a disability that doesn't allow them to either see or hear, which was not the intent, but was something we wanted to make sure was incorporated in that amendment. MEA's concerns were more along the lines of ensuring for some transparency in the participation process, and I'll let them speak. I believe that all of these folks are here today, and so I don't want to steal their thunder and speak out of turn on their behalf. But that is the proposal which we all came in agreement on a couple of months ago when we were first kicking the bill around. Yes, I believe the intent would be to strike and replace.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thanks.
Representative Thorne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, Senator Stewart. Glad to see your smiling face this morning.
Likewise.
And I just wanted to let you know, we have seen some of these other remote recordings, especially when it comes to education and the school systems, and some of the drawbacks as far as privacy is concerned and such. In examining this bill, what do you see as the primary obstacle to implementing it from your perspective?
Just to clarify, you're asking what is the primary obstacle to allowing local governments to meet remotely? Right. Well, it's my understanding, and MMA can speak a lot more fluently on this than I can. It's my understanding that the way that the statute's written right now, it presents some problems for local governing boards and whatever they may be. It could be city council, town council, or school board, from being able to do that. I suspect that some have been doing that throughout the pandemic anyway, out of necessity. And so that was my reference in my testimony about not wanting to penalize these towns for just trying to operate and maintain operations throughout the pandemic. I hate to sort of punt the question, but that's what I'm going to do, is punt it to, I believe Kate Dufour is here today on behalf of them. So she would be able to tell you a lot more examples about that.
Okay, so this, in other words, what this does is put it in statute so that anybody who wanted to do it wouldn't have to worry about violating any privacy or state laws.
That's the long and the short of it, yes, is to make our state laws more flexible with regard to how those meetings take place, And in today, in a virtual world, I think that makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I'm not seeing any additional questions for Senator Stewart. I did just want to thank you very much for bringing this bill forward and also for all the work you've done in the interim to address concerns and bring us a proposed amendment. We really appreciate you doing all that legwork ahead of time.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. And with that, so typically we allow legislators who wish to speak in favor of the bill to come up second. So we'll bring in Representative Sachs, and then we'll turn to the representative from the Maine Municipal Association. And I did want to let everyone who has signed up to speak on this bill, and there are quite a number of people, that in this committee we do run a 3-minute clock on testimony, and thereafter we'll have some committee questions for those who testify on bills. And so I'll remind you of the clock, but please also be mindful of it because we have about 10 bills to do in 3.5 hours this morning. And Representative Sachs, we want to welcome you to the Judiciary Committee. Are you able to activate your camera?
Madam Chair, the same issue as Senator Stewart. It's a bipartisan issue this morning. It is not allowing me, and so I can try to rejoin the meeting if needed, because it will not allow me to turn. It says my video is on, but will not allow me to continue that.
Yeah, and it's funny because usually I can fix something on my end, and I am not able to. I'm not sure what's going on.
Would you prefer that I rejoin the meeting and then
No,
can certainly, if you want to
just go ahead, because we won't have time this morning if we have to do a technology fix for every person. So
just know that I'm smiling with my eyes as well to all of the wonderful committee members. Good morning, Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on the Judiciary. My dog is safely locked away at the moment. My name is Melanie Sachs, and I represent House District 48, which includes Freeport and part of Pownell. I'm submitting this testimony in strong support of LD 32, an act regarding remote participation in public proceedings. At the beginning of the session, I submitted a bill similar to the one sponsored by Senator Stewart. I have received favorable feedback from residents, municipal staff, and elected officials in my district supporting the continued use of electronic participation tools for public meetings at every level. Several reported exponential, sustained engagement by the public in the meetings and issues, which they welcomed. Remote participation lowers barriers faced by Mainers in our rural state. It has been a game changer for an island community that I represent that I'll discuss in a minute. It allows residents who cannot drive after dark, which is 4 p.m. in our winter months, or cannot drive for many reasons, including no transportation, allows them to engage in these civic conversations in real time from their own homes. It accommodates those with disabilities. It allows working families to be part of, for example, school board meetings while their children are asleep in the next room. Municipal officials in my district also report greater engagement, not only in council meetings, for example, but other committees like Planning or Project Review Board. So you'll hear testimony today from many large municipalities and entities. I'm here in part to spotlight the positive impact for one of the smallest. I was asked to sponsor my bill by the Bustins Island Village Corporation, which Village Corporations is a unique unit of government, local government here in Maine, created by Chapter 213 of the Private and Special Laws. They're an island off the coast of Freeport, but they have political and legal status separate and distinct from that of Freeport. They have an elected board of overseers, an appointed planning board and zoning board of appeals, and officially several other standing committees to help carry out the responsibilities of their corporation, even though they are officially only a seasonal committee, open April to October. Families have lived for generations on this island, and it is truly a special place. You will hear from one of those residents today. But pursuant to their state charter, currently members of the main boards must be property owners, and only 30% of those property owners currently live the rest of the year within traveling distance for meetings. This greatly limits the number of people able to serve because they need to be physically present. The number of the public who wish to attend are likewise restricted. As you'll hear from them today, the use of remote participation tools have been critical in maintaining communication, increasing engagement of the public and community, and enabling a more efficient use of resources. So I will tell this committee, I only pulled my bill from the revisor's office on behalf of this tiny village corporation after checking with Maine Municipal Association, the Ombudsman's office, and obtaining an opinion by the Deputy Attorney General's office that village corporations are indeed covered by the language of LD 32. This is an incredibly important issue for this tiny community and for me. Without passage of this legislation, as noted, this island community would disenfranchise 70% of their current members who might wish to serve. And I'm certain they're not alone. As this example illustrates, this year-long experiment we have all had and are continuing to have of allowing remote participation.
Thank you, Representative Sachs.
Thank you. So thanks for considering communities big and small and for your support for this legislation.
Thank you. Committee members, are there questions for Ms. Sachs? For Representative Sachs? I'm not seeing any. Once again, thank you so much for your flexibility in dealing with the technology glitches and for presenting your testimony today.
I look forward to seeing you all next Tuesday. Thank you again for having me.
You're welcome. And now we have the next proponent is Kate Dufour from Maine Municipal Association, and you can proceed whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, and members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Kate Dufour, and I'm here on behalf of the Maine Municipal Association to provide testimony in favor of LD 32 as amended. And want to thank Senator Stewart for advancing this legislation for us. We've long advocated for this authority at the local level to meet remotely and conduct business remotely. And we believe, as Senator Stewart pointed out, the pandemic did provide us a great opportunity. Municipal government was really put to the test this year. And from my perspective, I believe we passed it. We've illustrated to the legislature, to the media, and to our residents that we can be trusted with this incredibly important tool. While town offices' doors may have been locked, planning boards continue to meet, meaning that economic development moved forward. Councils and boards met in order to adopt budgets and to get meaningful services out to members of the public. We responded, and I'm very proud of the way we responded and the things that we got done. The bill before you provides communities great flexibility in adopting an ordinance that best fits each community's needs. However, there are provisions in place to ensure everybody is protected. It requires the adoption of a policy or ordinance that governs how remote meetings are used. It requires that the conduct of or the use of the remote process allows for meaningful conversation and communication between the board and members of the public. It requires notice. It requires that notice to include information on how members of the public can participate. And it also now, through the amendment, includes what I like to call a goose/gander clause, which requires, to the extent that a member of the public body is allowed to, the public proceeding is allowed to participate remotely, so can everybody else. And it again retains that provision that all votes have to be taken by roll call. So we think it provides good protections and the flexibility communities need. Attached to my testimony is a study that we did of our members with respect to this particular piece of legislation. And there are three key findings. The first is throughout the year, or 18 months, municipalities who have been using remote meetings have seen an increase in participation. It is so easy to jump on a planning board meeting or a board of selectmen meeting or a council meeting when you're at home. You can take care of your kids, you can do homework, and you can really listen in to what's going on in the community. We're hoping that fosters volunteerism, that it's not scary to run for the board of selectmen or to serve on the planning board or to get on the budget committee. We think this is a good way to get the public engaged in the things that we do every day. The second is improved efficiencies. This allows communities to interact with contractors or attorneys remotely so that they don't sit in the audience for half an hour or an hour while we debate an issue. they can be on call. And so we're not paying the lodging or the travel fees. And finally, I just want to mention that this is not for everyone. There are communities that do not like this tool. They will not use this tool. So to the extent that it provides the flexibility, it doesn't become mandatory. This will really fit the needs of all communities. And I thank you for your time and consideration. I think I did it.
You were right on the nose. Thank you. Committee members, are there questions for Ms. Dufour and MMA? Go ahead, Representative Thorne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Dufour, for showing up today and providing your testimony on behalf of LD 32. And, you know, we see all kinds of bills come across that, you know, maybe just hit certain sectors that only benefit a certain cross section of the citizens of Maine. This seems to be a benefit to all communities of Maine going forward, in that it almost gives them a blessing to proceed with the remote participation without incurring possibly any privacy issues or details that they haven't figured out. I asked Senator Stewart what he thought the drawbacks of this bill would be, the hidden things that are obstacles to passing or perhaps roadblocks. Do you see anything like that?
I don't, and I'll go back to the element of my testimony. We've been advocating for this, and there's been some resistance because there was great concern about access and public notice and the ability for the public to engage in public matters. And we understand that. I mean, this is municipal government. We are open. And the pandemic and the temporary authority that was provided to municipalities to meet remotely has illustrated that remote meetings actually has benefits to all involved. So I think, you know, it's Pollyanna, but, you know, it's nice to find a silver lining in an otherwise dark 18 months where, you know, we were provided the tools necessary to get the job done, and we did. And so I think this was the test that we needed, kind of a pilot that we needed in order to illustrate that this works and there's benefits for all involved.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Moriarty?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Dufour, somehow when I printed the testimony, the amendment didn't come through, but I've since been able to print it. I've tried to skim it while listening to you and the previous witnesses. So my question is, what if a public body determines that its own members must attend in person? Can that be done under the bill as amended? And if it is done, can that body still allow remote public participation? We tried to draft the bill as open-ended as possible, and you know, to the extent that the municipal officers want to continue to Zoom, for example, in order to the public to come in, and they're still meeting and, you know, in council chambers, I believe this bill is open-ended enough to allow that. Okay, that's good. Thank you then.
Not seeing any other questions from committee members. Ms. Dufour, thank you very much. And we may call on MMA to participate in the work session as well.
I will be there.
Thanks for your work on this bill. And next we have Susan Spalding. And Ms. Spalding, if you are able to activate your audio and video, please do. And you can begin your testimony whenever you're ready. Welcome.
Thank you. Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Judiciary. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of LD 32. My name is Sue Spalding and I live in Freeport. I am the municipal clerk for the Bustins Island Village Corporation, which I will refer to here as the BIVC. For those of you not familiar with the Village Corporation, it is a body politic, a quasi-municipality enabled by the Maine State Legislature. The BIVC was enabled in 1913. In the written opinion from the Deputy Attorney General's office, the BIVC is a political or administrative division and would be covered by LD 32. Being allowed to meet remotely this past year has solved a serious problem for us. We are a seasonal island community accessible only by boat. Whereas on the mainland, any resident may serve in town government, there are no year-round residents of Bustons. According to our state charter, it is only property owners who may vote in our proceedings and hold office in the Board of Overseers, the Planning Board, or the Zoning Board of Appeals. Our problem is that only 30% of our property owners live within reasonable traveling distance to where we hold our governmental meetings off-season. That leaves 70% of our voters virtually disenfranchised from holding office or even attending meetings. It also leaves us with only a small pool of people, 30%, to do the governmental work of the island. When the BIVC was formed in 1913, there were just a few municipal meetings in the summer when many islanders were present. Now we meet at least monthly, year-round on the mainland. Last spring, the overseers met via Zoom every week for 4 months to prepare the island for coronavirus safety protocol. Our experience with meeting via Zoom this past year has been very positive. There has been increased public attendance and better communication with the public. We are able to share documents in real time. We take public comment. The meetings are video recorded and made accessible to the public. If these tools were available for continued use, all of our residents, many of whom have been here for generations, would have the opportunity to serve. To sum up, remote participation is less of a convenience and more of a necessity to ensure equal opportunity for islanders to participate in the BIVC government and to allow access to our municipal proceedings to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Spalding. Committee members, are there any questions for Ms. Spalding? Not seeing any. We really want to express our appreciation for you providing testimony to the Judiciary Committee today and for sharing your perspective. And with that, we'll bring over Nick Batista, and I'll ask those who are in the attendee space, if you could all please, if you're here to testify in support of LD 32, please raise your electronic hand and keep it raised until after you've had an opportunity to provide your testimony. And Mr. Batista, welcome to the Judiciary Committee. You can begin your testimony whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, members of the committee. My name is Nick Batista, and I'm offering this testimony in support of LD 32 on behalf of the Island Institute. The Island Institute is a 38-year-old nonprofit organization based in Rockland, Maine. We're a community development organization, and we focus on the marine economy, climate and energy work, small businesses, education, and leadership. Broadband's foundational to this work, and all Mainers need to have the ability to use high-speed, reliable internet. 75% of Maine's coastal communities have fewer than 3,500 people, and 25% of those communities have fewer than 800 people. We tend to work in these small remote communities. They're logistically challenging to get to, and community capacity constraints are very real. When you rely on ferry transportation that runs a couple of times a week, attending a meeting in person can be a costly multi-day affair. And that's either if you're going out to a community to attend a meeting, or if somebody in the community is coming in to attend a meeting on shore. I'm also the chair of the Connect Maine Authority, and we've had over 15 virtual board meetings since the beginning of the pandemic, and countless of engagement meetings, all remotely. Participation in these meetings is an order of magnitude greater than it has been. 10 people used to be a really big showing at a Connect Maine meeting. 5 to 8 was more common. We're seeing 50 to 70 people attending regularly and occasionally more. Of the approaches outlined in the various bills around remote meetings, the framework in LD 32 seems to be the most workable and easiest to implement, and recognizes the various needs of Maine's communities and boards. To be fair, pre-pandemic, communities were already doing this. They were doing it without the structure and the process in place, and with a fair amount of legal uncertainty. If you asked a lawyer if you could do this, the answer was usually, well, we don't think so. But they did it anyway because they had to. Adding this tool helps to make that a little bit easier and broadens participation in civic life, and creates a clear pathway for government bodies to use virtual meetings, and this will help our state urge you to support LD 32.
Thank you very much, Mr. Batista. And committee members, are there any questions for Mr. Batista? Go ahead, Representative Thorne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. You seem to be pretty knowledgeable, Mr. Batista. Is there a maximum participation that a Zoom couldn't handle? Or have we encountered that before where it overloads the session or causes any problems that way?
Yeah, I mean, there are different technologies that you can use. Zoom is certainly a technology that many people are using. If you're under 100 or so participants, it's pretty easy. If you're getting over, you can get up to 500 people on a Zoom call, is my understanding. You just need to work it a little bit differently. There's some remote meeting facilitation skills that could be helpful, things like that. But the technology's there, and often, there are opportunities to do like what you do here in these committee hearings, where there's Zoom and it's presenting as a webinar, or Zoom and you can be in the interactive space like we are now. And then you can also be live streaming on YouTube, which a number of municipalities do. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Any additional questions? Not seeing any. I did just want to express thanks to you for bringing us the data about the numeric increase in participation. That's really helpful information along with the rest of your testimony. Thank you.
It's been striking to see, and the people who have been participating are community members and businessmen and people who need the benefits of broadband, not just the people who can take hours out of their day and drive to Augusta, or paid lobbyists or trade associations.
Thank you very much. And now we are joined by Kate Snyder, who is the mayor of the city of Portland. You can proceed when you're ready, Ms. Snyder.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, and distinguished members of the Judiciary Committee. I'm Kate Snyder, Mayor of Portland, and I'm here on behalf of the Legislative Committee of the City of Portland to support LD 32, an act regarding remote participation in public proceedings. As we all know, COVID-19 tested local and state governments' flexibility and resiliency in many unprecedented ways. In the midst of addressing a public health crisis, as well as the enormous economic impact and impacts of the pandemic, the City of Portland was also faced with the questions: how do we safely continue to operate legislatively? How do we consider and approve emergency operational changes that might benefit the people or businesses of Portland in a time of crisis? How do we continue to consider and act on the multitude of policy issues that deserve our attention now? Governor Mills' March 18th, 2020 executive order to allow towns to conduct meetings remotely answered that question. Since that order was issued, the City of Portland has held well over 400 public meetings via Zoom. The City Council, along with its committees and boards, has been able to continue its work reviewing, recommending, and approving ordinances. Without the executive order, city business would have come to a grinding halt. Just as important, members of the public have continued to have face-to-face interactions and the ability to provide public comment with elected officials, city staff, and volunteers who comprise the many boards, committees, and commissions, therefore maintaining a connection that is essential in a responsive and accountable city government. In our case, remote meetings have not resulted in less public engagement and participation. In fact, public participation has increased. Portland's residents and business owners have been fully able to participate in the public process, and the council, boards, and committees have been able to conduct their work as efficiently as they did in person. The majority of meetings have had more attendees than we would have seen if we were meeting in person. Anecdotally, we have received feedback from members of the public that remote meetings have made it easier for them to participate in their government. The challenges many people faced in attending an in-person meeting, childcare, travel, long work days, and physical limitations, not to mention parking, are no longer an issue with remote meetings. Councilors and board committees, council and board committee members have been able to participate in meetings and that they would otherwise have had to have missed due to similar restrictions. Today, I ask you to approve LD 32 without reservation. The ability for elected officials and the public to continue to participate in meetings remotely is a legislative and administrative necessity that will no doubt have important applications, whether or not we are in the midst of a pandemic. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mayor Snyder. Committee members, are there any questions? Oops. Not seeing any. Thank you so much for providing your testimony this morning.
Thank you.
And next we'll have John Kozinski, who will provide testimony on LD 32. Welcome. Welcome to the Judiciary Committee. You may proceed.
Wonderful. Thank you, Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, and other esteemed members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is John Kozinski. I'm here on behalf of the Maine Education Association to testify in support of LD 32 as amended, and also register our concern and opposition to LD 746, a bill you will be hearing later today. The MEA represents 24,000 educators in the state of Maine, including educators in nearly every public school in the state, and the faculty and other professionals at the University of Maine system and community college system. First, I want to really thank Senator Stewart, our friends at the Maine Municipal Association, and the Disability Rights Maine Coalition for working together to address our concerns around the original proposal. And our concerns surround public participation, particularly in school board meetings, but in all municipal bodies. We have now seen a year of remote proceedings around the state. Overwhelmingly, as you heard from the Portland mayor and from others, these have gone swimmingly. Public participation has increased, and everyone feels good about how they're conducted. However, if this is going to be codified in law, the MEA's main concern is ensuring public participation is protected. We feel strongly, especially when it comes to school boards, that parents, community members, and educators should have an open line of communication with school board members about the performance of schools. We have seen examples over the past year where intentionally or unintentionally, public participation may have been stifled during remote proceedings. We think the bill before you as amended provides some better protection, hopefully to prevent those kinds of actions in the future, and to hopefully make everyone feel good that remote proceedings, their voices are being heard and they can communicate effectively with the governing bodies. This bill does that. It preserves, for example, specifically, a bill that was passed last year to require public comment at every school board meeting, and you will find that in the amended version as well. Not sure this will solve all the problems that may arise regarding public participation, but definitely feel the amended version provides the guardrails necessary as we continue to learn more about public proceedings. I want to also recognize and appreciate that this includes the higher ed governing bodies. Last year, the University of Maine made the horrific decision to try to cut benefits for retired faculty and other members. And during their Board of Trustees meetings, retirees from around the state and around the country were able to call in and register their opposition. And the university finally rescinded that bad decision and returned healthcare to the retirees. So that was one example of it working. So thank you so much for your time. I just want to say LD 746 doesn't include those same guardrails, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kozinski. And thank you for combining your testimony on these remote participation bills. We appreciate that. Committee members, are there any questions for Mr. Kozinski? And I am not seeing any. So with that, we thank you once again. Take care. Next, we'll have Leonard Blanchette, who is going to join our panel in just a moment. Welcome, Mr. Blanchette, and if you could proceed with your testimony.
We will do that. Thank you. Good morning, Senator Chair Carney and Representative Chair Harnett and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Judiciary. My name is Leonard Blanchette. I am the General Manager for the Brunswick Sewer District, and I reside in Winthrop, Maine. I offer this testimony on behalf of the Maine Water Environment Association in support of LD 32, an act regarding remote participation in public proceedings. The Maine Water Environment Association represents more than 600 members, including towns and sewer districts, who are on the front line of keeping the waters of Maine clean. The mission of the Maine Water Environment Association is to promote professional environmental management practices to protect and improve the waters and related environments of the state of Maine. Consistent with this mission, Maine Water Environment Association is offering this testimony in support of LD 32. This or similar bills have been before the committee a few times, most recently in 2018. In all previous efforts, any remote participation seemed to be a luxury more so than a necessity. 2020 and the COVID pandemic has changed the way we all do business and conduct our day-to-day lives. Remote meetings are no longer a luxury. They are the reality we live in. Today, you are considering this remote participation bill remotely by way of an emergency executive order. Towns, schools, and various other boards have been conducting their business remotely since March 2020 and doing so successfully. It is time for the legislature to make the decision to allow remote proceedings from Maine's many boards and commissions and move Maine into the 21st century. The technology is in place. We all have access to smartphones, tablets, PCs, or laptops with video capability. There are several secure platforms with controls in place to successfully conduct these meetings. There are tangible cost-saving benefits also. Historically, we would have to send people across the state to attend meetings, which they can now do from their offices or homes. As you consider LD 32, an act regarding remote participation in public proceedings, using the very same technology to conduct this public hearing, please ask yourself if there is any better proof of its viability as a public communications medium. In conclusion, the Maine Water Environment Association urges the committee to vote or to pass for LD 32. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Blanchett. Committee members, are there any questions for Mr. Blanchett? I'm not seeing any, so with that, lots of appreciation for your presentation today.
Thank you all.
Next, we'll be joined by William Norbert, who is joining the panel momentarily.
Hi, good morning, Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, and distinguished members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Bill Norbert. I'm the Governmental Affairs and Communications Manager at the Finance Authority of Maine, and I'm here to testify in favor of this bill and also to withdraw, to be efficient, to withdraw our opposition to Representative Babbage's bill, LD 668. We have seen his amendment. We greatly appreciate his listening to our concerns. And so we support that amendment. And so I won't be testifying on that bill later. Yeah, just to be brief, we support having the flexibility to adopt policies that conform with the requirements set forth in Senator Stewart's bill. FAME never used remote participation, even though we have board members from all across the state. Frequently, there's at least one from Aroostook County or Washington County, but we've used it. And it's gone really well, like you've heard from others. And we have had a slight uptick in public participation. I'm not going to say a ton because we rarely get public participants unless they're involved in a deal that we're considering, a commercial loan deal or some other matter. But we have had some drop in, and I think it's because of the technology. So it's gone really well. We would like to have this option. We like to talk with our board about it and see how they feel about the future. But anyhow, that's the gist of our testimony. You can read some other points in it, but I won't belabor your time. I know how busy you are. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Norbert, and thank you for providing the written testimony as well. We will definitely take a look at it, and we appreciate your being here today. Committee
You bet.
members, are there any questions for Mr. Norbert? Not seeing any. Once again, many thanks.
Thank you. Good luck.
And next, we'll hear from Peter Merrill from Maine State Housing.
Good morning, Senator Carney, Representative Hartnett, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Judiciary. My name is Peter Merrill. I'm speaking on, well, I guess let me ask the chair. I'm going to testify on 3 of these bills. Would you like that all at once, or would you like them bill by bill?
You can choose whatever, since you're more familiar with the substance of your testimony, do whatever you feel is most efficient and most helpful to the committee.
Probably for your sake, it's more efficient if I do them all at once.
Okay.
So let me start, if I may, by speaking about LD 1224, which you were kind of.
Mr. Merrill, actually, if you could hold off on 1224,
okay,
since that's different than, since that's a very entity specific. But
okay,
you can address the more general ones together if you'd like.
Okay, in that case, I'd like to speak about LD 32, and I'd like to speak about LD 668, Representative Babbage's bill. In the primary one that I'm interested in is LD 1224, but I think LD 32. Well, let me back up. I'm sorry. I'm speaking as chairman of the Cultural Affairs Council. And the Cultural Affairs Council is established by the state in 1991 to ensure a coordinated, integrated system of cultural resource programming and projects to ensure support of cultural heritage, institutions, and activities of the state. Members of the Cultural Affairs Council are the Maine Arts Commission, the Maine Historic Preservation Commission, the Maine Library Commission, the Maine State Museum Commission, the Maine Humanities Council, the Maine Historical Society, and the Maine State Archives. The chair and the vice chair of each of the members of those agencies is a member of the council. Chair is appointed by the governor from among those members, and the agency directors and the representative of the governor's office serve as ex officio members of the council. The council meets quarterly. Meetings are generally about an hour and a half. Many of our members live too far away from Augusta to make in-person attendance practical or efficient. We value the geographic diversity that we have, and remote participation enhances the quality of our work and the utility of our organization. This bill, I guess I'll just close with that. You've heard all of this, I think, from everyone else. This bill provides a broad framework for that, and so we think that would work as well. Regarding Representative Babbage's bill 668, as Mr. Norbert said, and I would be speaking, don't want to confuse you, but I would be speaking on that bill as Deputy Director of the Maine State Housing Authority. And the Maine State Housing Authority and 4 or 5 other bond issuers have worked with the committee over the years, and we already have very specific authority for remote participation in law. We don't want to lose that. In Representative Babbage's original bill, we would have lost that authority along with the other bond issuers, and would have tried to fit ourselves into the kind of one size fits all, if you will, and lived with some of the restrictions in the original bill that we objected to. However, Representative Babbage will be offering a sponsor's amendment, which we very much support, and therefore it allows us to retain what we already have, and we support that. So I will save you from hearing me speak on that bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your combining things and increasing the efficiency of our morning. Committee members, are there any questions for Mr. Merrill, either with regard to his role with the Cultural Affairs Council or Maine Housing? Not seeing any questions. Thank you very much, and we'll see you a little bit later for LD 1224.
Thank you.
And our final speaker on LD 32 is Victoria Wallach, and she has just joined our panel.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Senator Carney, Representative Hartnett, and members of the judiciary. I am Victoria Wallach, Director of Communications and Government Relations for Maine School Management and representing the Maine School Boards Association and Maine School Superintendents Association in support of LD 32. While my organization has been advocating for some time to allow remote participation by school board members, our experience, as others have stated, during this pandemic has given us valuable experience on how it can be done well. I think it is fair to say that many of us would not have been able to do our jobs without Zoom or Zoom-like platforms over the last year. Virtual meetings for school districts and municipalities have allowed our governing boards to do their essential work, and we have 1,800 board members statewide. That work has never been more important as we deal with the pandemic and its impact on students and staff, both this year with hybrid still going on in some places, and what is anticipated to be a full reopening in the fall. We are very hopeful. We also have run all our MSBA and MSSA meetings virtually during the pandemic, including our board's delegate assembly, which had upwards of 80 members at one point. As others have said, it actually stimulated more conversation. We had very robust, it was hours long, I will say, but we had very robust discussion about all the issues. It facilitated that. It is our belief that virtual meetings can increase public participation by making it easier for people to attend. The functions of the popular platform, also allow, as we all know, a lot of sharing of documents. And that's another thing that we haven't talked about. People can actually see what you're talking about versus if you didn't get the meeting packet when you got there. So I think it increases that. We believe people will get increasingly comfortable with virtual participation, and it has the real possibility of increasing citizen engagement post-pandemic, which is, as stated, is the silver lining. So I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. Committee members, are there any questions for Ms. Wallach? Not seeing any this morning. Thank you very much. And that is Ms. Wallach is the last person who signed up to testify for this bill in advance, but I just want to turn to those on the attendee portion of the meeting and ask if there's anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of LD 32, please raise your electronic hand. Then if there's anybody opposed, please raise your electronic hand. Neither for nor against. I'm not seeing any more electronic hands, and so with that, we'll bring the public hearing on LD 32 to a close and thank our bill sponsor, Senator Trey Stewart, very much for bringing this bill forward. And now we will turn to our public hearing on LD 668, which is sponsored by our colleague on the Judiciary Committee, Representative Chris Babbage, who of course is here to present his bill. And Representative Babbage, you can proceed whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. Are you hearing me? Okay,
yeah, we hear you just fine.
Okay, great. I'm sorry. I had to check to make sure my mic was okay. Thank you very much, Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, esteemed colleagues on the Joint Standing Committee on Judiciary. For others, my name is Christopher Babbage. I live in Kennebunk, and I'm privileged to represent House District number 8. I'm before you today to introduce LD 668, an act to ensure public accountability while implementing a practical approach to remote participation. The text of LD 668 mirrored the work I did 2 terms ago, working with other members of the Right to Know Committee. I am presenting an amendment that focuses the bill to allow locally elected governmental bodies to adopt a policy permitting remote participation if specific criteria is met, or are met in this case. Chapter 13 in state statute specifies that public proceedings exist to aid in the conduct of the people's business. It also directs that deliberations be conducted openly and that actions be taken openly. Part of the First Amendment right to petition the government is for the people to have access to their elected leaders. Meetings of elected bodies attended by citizens with opportunity for exchange has been part of our democratic heritage since colonial times. Over time, it's been a tenet of American democracy that elected officials meet their responsibility by attending and voting in person and be present physically to be accountable to constituents. Recent technological advances have made the option and convenience of remote participation more attractive. Remote participation in public proceedings is neither prescribed nor prohibited in statute, but the default expectation is that physical attendance is necessary to vote. The only directive we have for guidance is the opinion of the Attorney General formally requested and written. So you can have informal requests, but when you have a formal, it takes the form of law in the absence of statute. And that remote participation is not allowed because members of a public body must be present and subject to the public's eye. In the absence, though, of specific statutory guidance, some complained that it was the Wild West out there, with some communities with geographic challenges using remote anyway. Certain state agencies adopted policies for remote participation. And now COVID has nearly everyone working remotely, with remote participation by governmental bodies authorized by the Chief Executive's executive order and subsequent inclusion in Chapter 13, subsection 403A. Why should we be cautious as we consider moving forward with granting elected officials to adopt a policy regarding remote participation? Now, please understand where I'm coming from here, because I've been working on this 3 terms, and the pushback, I fought for this on the floor of the House, and there was great pushback that it is our responsibility as public officials in any capacity in the state of Maine to be there, to be accountable to our constituents. So I'm fighting a different battle today, because I think today we finally seen the light of how remote can work effectively and has great advantages. It has advantages environmentally, it has advantages with increased participation, and I think Ms. Dufour and speakers before us have elaborated on the advantages. But as we move forward now, I want to make sure we do this correctly. So one of the things that I think we have to consider is accountability of the public. That is the right to petition and confront your government. And that's somewhat compromised if physical attendance is avoided. You can sometimes wait till after the meeting to get a clarification or whatever. Studies in human psychology have demonstrated that behavior is more likely to be bold or harsh as personal accountability is reduced. And I think remote participation can make us a little more insulated than we would be if we were there in person. Remote participants are unlikely to have equal access to all relevant materials. Screen sharing is not always requested, and it is good, but it's not ideal. Participants don't experience the feeling in the room of an in-person public, partially because of a limited screen space and non-speakers are muted. Off-screen attendance by influencers, people who may be in attendance in the company of an official participating remotely, are not observed by the public. Expressly permitting remote participation invites expansion of its use when it may not be necessary, and advantages and disadvantages have to be weighed. And the exercise of power as expressed by a vote, I think is best done in the invited presence of those served. But certainly during the civil emergency, elected officials who have accomplished much good work, as we adapt. When the civil emergency ends and remote participation is no longer a protected practice, some communities will be challenged more than others. Should self-governing municipalities exercise local control to fit their needs? Well, LD 668 provides that path. Without statutory guidance, remote participation will be used without defined protections and standards of conduct, that ensure the public's rights are respected. The amendment replaces the bill and specifically addresses how elected government bodies may proceed to adopt a policy regarding remote participation. LD 668 provides the criteria necessary to allow an elected official's remote participation in a public meeting. Summarized, they are: A, notice in public hearing must precede adoption of a proposed written policy. That's been a three-term. Most of this is historic in that we are not reinventing the wheel. As you may know, I was a member of the Right to Know Committee in the 127th, and long before I got there, they had been advocating for remote participation. B, an executive session restricted to reasons already in statute are designed to protect an individual's right to privacy and reputation, and it requires confidentiality. And so that is not permitted remotely. And I believe that's also the case in as in the survey that MMA shared with us in Mr. Forrest's testimony. A quorum, in-person attendance minimum, disclosure of remote attendees, and provision for roll call votes are all defined and specified. This section applies to public proceedings after January 1st, 2022, and implementation of the adopted policy is authorized upon approval by a vote of citizens represented by those elected officials. I expect that any municipality that chooses to allow remote participation and have it in place for the new year may put it on the ballot for the November election. I appreciate your attention. I invite discussion. I propose this bill based on two premises. One, in-person attendance and availability to constituents and press is preferable to remote participation when possible. And two, governing bodies may be tempted to choose convenience over accountability. And so decisions affecting their in-person availability to the public should pass an expression of approval by their constituents. I ask that you provide a not to pass report to provide a path forward so that communities and regional bodies that elect their members have a legal path to remote participation that has input and approval from the voters served. And I think I'll end it there. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Representative Babbage, both for bringing this bill forward and for the really detailed presentation of the bill. You answered a lot of the questions that I had, so I appreciate how proactive your introduction to the bill was. Committee members, are there any questions for Representative Babbage? Keeping in mind that we will be able to ask you questions at the work session as well.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I realized this was scheduled on a Friday, and I may want to apologize to some of the folks that may have been concerned about the original bill because I didn't get back to them until later in the week, and I could have avoided them some work. But I know that we're under a gun today with a hard stop, so I did not recruit a lot of folks to testify, and I think most of them have testified about remote already. So thanks so much.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. And I think that, yeah, a lot of folks did combine their testimony, which is also pretty helpful. Representative Evangelos, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very briefly, I just wanted to recognize Representative Babbage's work on this topic. He may or may not remember I've been one of the dissenters on his efforts here, but he was mindful of the saying that necessity was the mother of invention, and because of the pandemic, those moments arrived, and we're learning on the run, and I know that an improved model will develop. We've already improved a lot since January, so thank you for your pursuit of these ideas, Chris.
Thanks, Representative Evangelos. And I think we've already heard all of the testimony on your bill in conjunction with earlier, although we may hear some additional comments as we move through our morning. Thank you very much, Representative Babbage. And let me just turn to those in the attendee portion of the meeting. Is there anybody here who hasn't already provided testimony on 668 that wishes to be heard in support of the bill? Please raise your hand, electronic hand. In opposition? Or neither for nor against? We have Mayor Snyder would like to be heard on this bill, so I am going to bring her onto the panel. And again, anybody who is an attendee who wishes to be heard on 668, raise your electronic hand, please, and keep it raised. Welcome back, Mayor Snyder. You can begin whenever you're ready.
I'm going to be with you all morning. Thank you very much again. Good morning. Again, Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, and distinguished members of the Judiciary Committee. I'm Kate Snyder, Mayor of Portland, and I'm here on behalf of the Legislative Committee of the City of Portland to oppose LD 668, an act regarding remote participation in municipal meetings. For more than a year, municipalities have been meeting remotely and continuing to conduct important work while still allowing for ample public participation. Remote meetings allow the public to participate from the comfort of their homes without having to travel, find parking, and sit through potentially hours worth of debate on actions they may not be interested in, deterring many from civic engagement at all. Thanks to remote meetings, people haven't had to worry about childcare, access, and other issues that in-person meetings present. Similarly, council, committee, and board members have been able to fully participate remotely, even when officials are traveling, feeling too ill to attend in person, and having scheduling conflicts that make the commute difficult, among other obstacles. We fully support legislation to continue the option to meet remotely into the future. We do not, however, support LD 668. LD 668 is unduly burdensome to the point that it makes the ability to attend meetings remoteless meaningless. First, it unnecessarily restricts remote participation in an executive session and prohibits voting on an item that was discussed in an executive session. We see no reason why an elected or an appointed official who is able to participate in a public session remotely should be prohibited from participating in an executive session remotely. Second, the bill requires at least one member or a majority to be present in person, again, potentially defeating the benefits of allowing for remote participation. Lastly, LD 668 requires the tracking of each and every person who enters or leaves the physical location where the meeting is held, which would be impossible for a city such as Portland, where sometimes hundreds of individuals attend public hearings. Although the city understands that LD 668 attempts to strike a balance between allowing remote participation and requiring some in-person attendance, our position is that greater discretion should be given to each municipality or governing body to determine what works for them and their constituents. In a municipality, if constituents are unhappy with remote meetings, they will inevitably make their voices heard, both through communication and through voting. The state should enable remote participation into the future with sufficient protections to allow the public to participate, but without unnecessary burdens that LD 668 imposes. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm here for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. And good job persisting through that beeping. That was challenging. Committee members, I see that.
Sorry about that.
No, You handled it beautifully. Are there questions for Ms. Snyder? For Mayor Snyder? Representative Babbage, I see that your hand is up. I know we have a policy that sponsors can only ask clarifying questions. Did you have a clarifying question?
Yes, I just wanted to assure Ms. Snyder that Mayor Snyder, right? That the stipulation, I think that was discussed back in the 127th when the original wording regarding members present who may be off camera was for the remote participant, not for the person that would be attending a meeting. And just to clarify that, the idea was if in fact there were lobbyists seated off camera, then that would be announced to the people in the meeting. That was the idea of it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that clarification. Representative Evangelos, did you have a question? Go
Thank you,
ahead.
Madam Chair. Yes, I did. Good morning, Mayor Snyder. Just real quickly, around the topic of the executive sessions, because that's been a long objection of mine on this process. So, I mean, quite frankly, usually I go to Augusta and Zoom in, but today I'm Zooming in from my dining room. So let's assume we're in executive session and my dining room is connected to my kitchen and my wife's right there and she can hear everything that's going on. And the other issue I was concerned about in the past was on an executive session proceeding, which may be adversarial, there is no safeguards that somebody's attorney could be in the room or a partisan outside of the view of the camera, but certainly in full audio of the proceedings. So what can we do on these executive sessions if you're advocating for executive sessions to be part of this? I just don't see any protections.
Thank you, Representative Evangelos. Mayor Snyder, if you could answer that, we'd appreciate hearing your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you my thoughts and experience on the use of executive session, remote executive session. So we always have our corporation counsel with us and always a reminder that executive sessions are confidential. There's no note taking. We make sure that we're on a secure a meeting. So typically we open the public meeting in one platform, take the necessary votes, public comment, and then we move into a separate platform, whether we're moving from Zoom to Google or Zoom to Zoom, it's always a separate platform. As we would do in person, lots of reminders about what's acceptable, what is legal as we conduct business in an executive session. There is the expectation that you're in a closed, you're in a room with a closed door so that your participation is truly confidential. Again, lots of reminders about what's appropriate in executive session and what's appropriate behavior of the elected official in terms of participation, note taking, and confidentiality. So we have been able to successfully do the work that we've had to do in executive session remotely. And I'm grateful that we have had that opportunity throughout this past year because sometimes that work is necessary.
Thank you. So the safeguards are basically good faith, but with no guarantees, not like when we're ask the reporters to leave and tell them the city council is going into executive session. You're just relying on faith, right?
Right. I mean, I guess I think about if folks were in person and you had your phone on an audio record and you're in executive session, I would never know that. If you take notes and you take them with you, I wouldn't know that. So I do think that there's trust, whether you're in person or you're remote. It is we are legally bound by state statute to the rigors of an executive session. So I take that very seriously and gosh, I hope if people are looking for a way around the right thing to do, well, that I can't control that, but I haven't had a worry that there has been inappropriate behavior as people engage in the executive sessions that we've had to do over the course of this past year. Like I said, lots of contextual reminders and structures that support the confidentiality of that work.
Thank you, Mayor Snyder. Committee members, are there any additional questions for Mayor Snyder? I am not seeing any. We thank you very much for providing the additional information. And Mayor Snyder is the last person who has asked to speak on LD 668. And so we'll close our public hearing on LD 668 and open our public hearing on our next bill, which is LD 746. And the bill sponsor is Representative Dillingham. I believe that she is here before us, or will be in a second. Welcome, Representative Dillingham. Before you begin and before we open up our work session, there are a couple of committee members who have joined us since we did introductions. So I'm going to ask them if they can introduce themselves. Start with you, Senator Sanborn.
Thank you, Senator Carney. My name is Heather Sanborn, and I represent Senate District 28, which is half of Portland and half of Westbrook. And I apologize for my eyes going up and down. I have two cameras, and I'm never sure which camera and which screen I should be looking at. So thanks.
You're welcome. And Representative Newell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rena Newell, and I am the Passamaquoddy Tribal Representative. Thank you.
Representative Reckitt.
Morning. I also apologize. I'm in two committees at once, so I'm like dashing back and forth and going a bit nuts. But anyway, I represent District 31, which is the ocean end of South Portland, which I'm going to resist the temptation to jump into today if I don't maintain my sanity through these two functions today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Representative Sheehan, I don't remember if you had an opportunity to introduce yourself or not. You have. Okay. I think I've captured everybody. And so with that, we will welcome Representative Dillingham and open the public hearing on LD 746. You can go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Judiciary. I am Kathleen Dillingham, and I represent House District 72, which is comprised of the towns of Mechanic Falls, Otisfield, and my hometown of Oxford in beautiful Western Maine. I thank you for allowing me to present to you today LD 746, an act regarding remote participation in municipal meetings. While I'm aware that Senator Stewart has presented a bill similar to what I had previously submitted for any special session of the 129th legislature, and am presenting here today, this proposal speaks specifically to permanently implementing the executive order issued by the governor last June that would allow remote participation in boards, commissions, agencies, and authorities of municipalities to conduct meetings remotely. Last summer, members of boards in my district brought this request forward to me with the realization that while this type of participation was necessary during the period the state was shut down, they quickly saw it provided an alternative, and they realized an increase in participation in local government. Representative Babbage spoke of when the concept of remote participation was brought forward previously, and I was one that expressed doubt and concern, but I think we have seen that it's provided a benefit, and with clear rules and guidance, I now believe it's important that we adopt this concept into statute. This proposal is intended to be voluntary and allow the municipality to choose whether or not to continue to allow remote participation once the state of emergency is ended, and does not mandate participation. As written, it also does not apply to town meetings held pursuant to Title 30-A, Section 2524, or regional school unit budget meetings held pursuant to Title 20A, Section 1482-A. I thank you for your time, and I hope the committee will be able to support this proposal, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Committee members, are there any questions for Representative Dillingham? Go ahead, Representative Thorne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, Representative Dillingham. I have a question for you when it pertains to, we've talked to a little bit about this as it pertains to members of the board versus members of the public in municipal meetings. And I'm just trying to assess the ability on the executive sessions if a member decides of a committee decides that they want to participate remotely versus in person. Is there anything that would be in this that would preclude that from occurring?
So I apologize. I've been in VLA and GOC today, so I haven't actually heard, other than Representative Babbage, his bill and the questions that were posed or concerns posed by Representative Evangelos. So I'm not sure what has previously been said around participation remotely versus public versus members. So this bill specifically, when I was asked by those members of the boards, they were speaking specifically about participation that they've realized from the public. But I do believe that where this is mimicking the language from the executive order, it does also apply and allow the participation of members of any board. And I can speak to members of my board here in Oxford, and I know that they do participate remotely, and certainly in the time of COVID, it has been a blessing. My husband does serve on our select board, and I know in times of where he's had direct exposure, hasn't tested positive, he hasn't had COVID, but he had direct exposure, he was still able to participate remotely in the meeting while quarantining. So I think that that's something that is a benefit. And I know Representative Evangelos speaking about concerns about executive session. And I think I would also agree with the mayor that when you take your position and you go through your training and you enter into executive session, they're basically, you do, I'm not sure if there's an actual oath that is prescribed. I think they take an oath to take their office as a elected official locally, just like we do. And with that comes an expectation of integrity. So when you enter into your executive session, I would hope that you certainly maintain the integrity of that meeting. Being the wife of a sitting select board member, he doesn't come home and tell me about any executive sessions, nor would I even ask him, serving as a legislator. I respect that. I would hope, and you know, it is faith, and we do have to have some faith in individuals to you know, hold up to the expectation of the office that they're serving. So just as if somebody was in person, I think the mayor gave some examples of how individuals might be in person in an executive meeting and she still wouldn't know if there were violations. That same individual could actually leave that meeting and go share its contents verbally with others. So I think that we have to allow this in order to happen, that we have to be able to accept that if somebody, you know, they're going to have to hold up the integrity of their office, and there is a means to follow if there is violation. And you know, certainly municipalities need to be aware of pursuing those means if somebody does violate their executive order meetings. I don't know if I answered your question without knowing what happened previously. That's the best I could do.
No, that was very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. And yeah, I agree. That was a very helpful answer. We appreciate hearing from you on that. Committee members, any additional questions for the bill sponsor? I am not seeing any. And Representative Dillingham, you're welcome to remain on the panel while we check for members of the public. And I see that Representative Newell does have a question for you. So Representative Newell, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Representative Dillingham. I was just wondering, I was just looking, and maybe a question for Peggy, but I was looking for a copy of your testimony. I didn't find it in the committee materials.
No, I don't. I've taken to not, being somebody who my mailbox is normally overflowing with emails and testimony. I tend to just provide testimony, but I can send it to you if you would like that.
I'm sure I can just review the tape. Thank you.
Okay. And thank you for the invitation. If you don't mind, I am going to head over to GOC now.
Thank you very much.
All right. Wonderful. Have a great day and a lovely weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
So at this point, I'm turning to those in the attendee portion of the meeting. Is there anybody in the attendee portion who wishes to speak in favor of LD 746? We have Mayor Snyder again, wishing to provide testimony. If there's anyone else who wants to speak in favor of 746, please raise your electronic hand and keep it raised. And welcome back, Mayor Snyder. Go ahead.
Thank you again. Nice to spend the morning with you all. You're going to be clear where Portland stands on these matters. Good morning, Senator Kearney, Representative Harnett, and distinguished members of the Judiciary Committee. Again, I'm Kate Snyder, Mayor of Portland, and I'm here on behalf of the Legislative Committee of the City of Portland to support LD 746, an act regarding remote participation in municipal meetings. As we all know, COVID-19 tested local and state governments' flexibility and resiliency in many unprecedented ways. In the midst of addressing a public health crisis, as well as the enormous economic impacts of the pandemic, the City of Portland was also faced with the questions: how do we safely continue to operate legislatively? How do we consider and approve emergency operational changes that might benefit the people of Portland or the businesses in a time of crisis? How do we continue to consider and act on the multitude of policy issues that deserve our attention now? Governor Mills' March 18th, 2020 executive order to allow towns to conduct meetings remotely answered that question. Since that order was issued, the City of Portland has held well over 400 public meetings via Zoom. The City Council, along with its committees and boards, has been able to continue its work reviewing, recommending, and approving ordinances. Without the executive order, city business would have come to a halt. Just as important, members of the public have had the opportunity to have face-to-face interactions and the ability to provide public comment with these bodies and elected officials, maintaining a connection that is essential to a responsive and accountable city government. In our case, remote meetings have not resulted in less public engagement and participation. Rather, we have seen more as a result of remote access. Portland's residents and business owners have been able to fully participate in the public process, and the council, boards, and committees have been able to conduct their work as efficiently as they did in person. The majority of our meetings have had more attendees than we would have seen if we were meeting in person. Anecdotally, we have received feedback from members of the public that remote meetings have made it easier for them to participate in local government. The challenges many people faced in attending an in-person meeting, childcare, travel, long work days, and physical limitations are no longer an issue with remote meetings. Counselors and board and committee members have also been able to participate in meetings that they may have otherwise missed due to similar restrictions. Today, I ask that you approve LD 746 without reservation. The ability for elected officials and the public to participate in meetings remotely is a legislative and administrative necessity that have important applications, whether or not we are in the midst of a pandemic. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Mayor Snyder. Committee members, any additional questions for Mayor Snyder? Representative Hagan, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mayor Snyder, I cannot find your testimony in either portal. Did you submit it, or do you plan to submit it?
I believe it has been submitted by staff, but I will double check on that.
It could be probably me, but I'd like to.
Thank you.
I apologize for any confusion. I'll follow up on that. Again, it was my understanding that it was submitted electronically.
That's okay. I see that we have another question from Representative Harnett.
I just wanted to point out, I believe the testimony was submitted it's in the LD 32 file. It was a similar testimony to the testimony on the person.
It was indeed.
Give
Thank you.
that. I'll go get it.
All right. Any additional questions, committee members? I am not seeing any other hands raised. Mayor Snyder, thank you once again for appearing this morning.
Thank you very much.
And I don't see anyone else with a hand raised to testify in support of 746. If you are here to oppose 746, please raise your electronic hand. I'm not seeing any opponents and neither for nor against 746. And again, I am not seeing any electronic hands raised. So with that, we will close the public hearing on LD 746. And at this point, I am going to hand the virtual gavel through cyberspace to Representative Harnett to chair the remainder of this morning's meeting.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, committee members, members of the public. We will now open the public hearing on LD 1224, an act to authorize remote participation in Maine State Cultural Affairs Council meetings. And here to introduce the bill is my co-chair and our colleague, Senator Carney. Welcome, Senator Carney.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chair Harnett and esteemed members of the Judiciary Committee. As you know, I'm Ann Carney, representing Senate District 29, South Portland, Cape Elizabeth, and part of Scarborough. It's an honor to be before you today to present LD 1224, an act to authorize remote participation in Maine State Cultural Affairs Council meetings. This is the fourth remote participation bill the committee has considered this morning. Unlike the others, it is an entity-specific bill, and it is also quite short. As we've heard, a number of entities currently have statutory authority for remote participation. Those statutes address the needs of specific entities, and LD 1224 aims to address the specific needs of the Maine State Cultural Affairs Council. The Cultural Affairs Council is a statewide entity. It was established in 1991, and it ensures that coordinated cultural resource programming and projects occur throughout Maine. It also supports our cultural heritage institutions and activities in the state. Some examples include the Maine Arts Commission, the Maine Historical Society, and the Maine State Museum. As a statewide entity, the Cultural Affairs Council has members from throughout the state. Even prior to the pandemic, the council experienced a need to meet remotely. Meetings often last less than 2 hours, and the travel time for members could significantly exceed that meeting time. Remote meetings authority will make the council meetings more easily accessible, both to members and to Mainers throughout our state. It will continue to ensure and promote cultural programs and projects for Mainers. I urge you to support remote meeting authority for the Maine Cultural Affairs Council, given its unique role and membership. Peter Merrill, Chair of the Maine Cultural Affairs Council, is here to provide additional information about LD 1224. Thank you for your consideration this morning.
Thank you very much, Senator Carney, and thank you for bringing this bill forward. Are there questions for the bill sponsor, Senator Carney, from members of the committee? Seeing none, again, thank you very much, Senator Carney, and I will now turn to people who would like to speak in support of LD 1224, and there was nobody signed up electronically, but I know Mr. Merrill had indicated that he wanted to testify on this. So at this point, Mr. Merrill, I will ask you to offer your testimony, and welcome back to the committee.
Thank you very much, Representative Harnett and Senator Carney, members of the committee. I am Peter Merrill, Chair of the Cultural Affairs Council. I apologize for not having signed up. I must have booted that somehow.
It's not a problem.
Senator Carney did really just set it all for me, so thank you very much. We appreciate your bringing this bill forward. I would simply offer those of you who subscribe to the Bangor Daily News or the Portland Press Herald, in Wednesday's paper, there was a supplement of the Working Waterfront News, And in that, there was a profile of David Hopkins, who's the new chair of the Maine Arts Commission. He lives out on North Haven and has a national reputation for his work with museums and so on. And he is a perfect example of somebody for whom it would take longer to get on a ferry and get to Augusta than it would be worth for the time. His predecessor, Charles Stanhope, former deputy librarian of the Library of Congress, well-known Maine boy goes south and does well. And he lives in Southwest Harbor, also a long way to come to a meeting for something an hour and a half to 2 hours long. On the other hand, these are exactly the kinds of people we need and want in a statewide organization. And that's why we have brought this bill forward and asked Senator Carney to present it. There may be some question about, well, could we work within LD 32? And I suppose the answer is, yeah, we probably could. When the council asked us to do this, the committee and the Right to Know Committee have a long history of trying to find one approach to the whole remote participation thing, and it hasn't worked very well so far. The LD 32 may be the change because of the COVID, I don't know. But in any event, we would like to have specific authority as we do at the bond issuing agencies that I referred to earlier today. That would simply work best for us. And with that, I would thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Merrill, and for appearing before us on both bills. Are there questions from committee members for Mr. Merrill? Seeing none, again, thank you very much for your time and your testimony today.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
And I do not have anyone else who's registered to testify, but I do want to give anyone the opportunity who does want to do so. So I'm sorry, Representative Thorne, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just kind of raised this question as we go through the bills. I'm just curious, and maybe Senator Carney could clarify that we've had a lot of similar bills along these lines regarding participation in remote municipal meetings, state cultural affairs meetings, public proceedings, and so forth. And I'm just curious if are we covering all the bases that we can in these bills, or are there going to be gaps that we haven't covered as far as remote participation and different types of meetings with municipal cultural affairs and so forth? Just kind of a point of clarifying.
Yeah. Is that a question for the bill sponsor?
Yes.
Senator Carney?
Yeah, I would just say I think that that's a really important question for us to take up at our work session, because we'll be at that point talking among ourselves as a committee about the comparative benefits and coverages of the 4 bills that we've heard today. So I think it's a great question, and perhaps you can kick off our work session when it's scheduled. I think it's probably going to be next week.
So noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And sometimes I move too quickly, so I will ask again, are there questions from committee members for Mr. Merrill or the bill sponsor? And seeing none, I will now turn to the attendee room to ask if there are any persons in attendance that would like to testify in favor of LD 1224. If so, please raise your electronic hand. Seeing none, I would ask if there are any persons in attendance who would like to testify in opposition to LD 1224 to please raise your electronic hand. Again, seeing none, I will finally ask if there are any persons in attendance who would like to be heard neither for nor against LD 1224 to please indicate by raising your electronic hand. And seeing none, having received the testimony of those present today, I will now close the public hearing on LD 1224. Thank you, Senator Carney, for bringing this bill forward. Committee members and members of the public, I will now open the public hearing on LD 1200, an act to bring gender parity to corporate boards. And I would call on our colleague, Representative Galgay Reckett, to introduce the bill. Welcome, Representative.
Thank you. Good morning, Senator Carey, Representative Hartnett, and fellow members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Lois Galgay Reckett, and I represent House District 31, part of South Portland. And I'm here today to introduce LD 1200, an act to bring gender parity to corporate boards. California and Illinois are currently the only states to require corporate boards to include women. The California law, which was passed in 2018, requires all publicly traded companies with their principal offices in California to have women on their boards, with the exact number depending on the size of the board. The Illinois law, which passed in 2019, similarly requires all corporations based in the state to report data on board member gender and ethnicity, and then requires the University of Illinois system to establish a rating system assessing the representation of women on corporate boards. LD 1200 would establish Maine as the third state in the nation to require gender parity on a board of directors of a publicly held corporation, subject to the Maine Business Corporations Act, by requiring at least one female director. From there, the total number of female directors required on a board would be based on the total number of directors on a specific board. If I can bring your attention to page 2, line 11 of the bill, you will see that a board of directors with 6 or more directors would require a minimum of 3 female directors. If the number of directors on a board of directors is 5, then the board must have a minimum of 2 female directors. Finally, if a board has 4 or fewer directors, then they would be required to have a minimum of 1 female director. Taking into consideration the time it would take for this part of the proposal to be fully implemented, I have set compliance with this section to begin at the last business day of 2024. Similarly to California, this proposal would require the Secretary of State to publish a number of publicly accessible reports. No later than July 1, 2022, a report documenting the number of corporations subject to this act that have at least 1 female director. No later than March 1st, 2023, and each year thereafter, a report on the number of publicly held corporations subject to this act, and a report on the number of publicly held corporations subject to this act that were following the requirements of the makeup of their board of directors at least one point during the preceding calendar year. I bring this bill before you today after reading studies over the course of several years that articulated the impact of increased participation of women in all arenas of society. The general consensus seems to be that the impact is observed particularly when women become 30% of any group. I'd like to point out that this phenomena is observable now in our own Maine state legislature. When I read about the first in the nation law to require gender parity on corporate boards back in 2019, it got me thinking, why not Maine? Thank you for your time and consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have of me. I would say, that's not in my written testimony, I want to say as well that I have had experience in transitioning in organizations where these changes have happened. And it's in all venues I've been involved in, it's really been a change of tone. It's been a change of focus. Not that the others were necessarily bad, but that it's different. And I think that difference is a healthy thing. I have spoken extensively with the Secretary of State about this bill, and I think that she's going to be testifying after me, or someone from her office. And I think that the differences between what my bill articulates and what she feels is possible, I think can be easily melded and agreed upon in the course of the work session and the time before it. So I appreciate your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Representative Galgay-Reckett. We appreciate your bringing the bill forward and your being here to testify and present it today. Are there questions from committee members for the bill's sponsor, Representative Galgay-Reckett? Representative Thorne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for presenting this, Representative Galgay-Reckett. And I want to start by saying that I think very highly of females. I had a female for a mother. I had a couple of females for wives. I have 2 female daughters, 2 female granddaughters, and the list goes on and on. My question is, when we start requiring versus maybe a softer word, is it possible that there may be boards that may not be able to fill the requirement of female board members? Only because I see sometimes when we have position openings and we don't have a candidate to fill that position. And I don't know where that goes when, you know, you may not have a female that wishes or comes forward to be on the board of directors, and that the board is not in compliance because they couldn't find any female to run for that position. And I'm just wondering what would happen in that case, hypothetically.
Well, let me give you an example of a board on which I served where that issue arose, not around females, because frankly, the board was entirely female at that time, I think. But it was the board of the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And we had a long tradition of involvement of Native women in that work. And we had in fact, I think the first national president was a Native woman. But when the last of our Native representatives left the board for whatever reason that was, there was a refusal on the part of the board, which frankly I led, to not fill that seat until we could find somebody of Native ancestry who wanted to serve. And so we worked, and it took us almost a year to mend some fences and reach out and do a lot of work in order to make that happen. But we did do it. And I think it's important that when you set a priority like that, it depends on what the bill ends up saying. I think the word require is what you're questioning. And I think that we may end up in a place where we're publicizing the information in the hopes that public pressure would cause people to do this. For instance, if the annual reports for corporations asked this question and that information were compiled, it would certainly be a message that these corporations are 100% in compliance with this initiative and these aren't. You know, so I don't know how you would do that exactly. But I don't believe there's going to be a requirement that says, you know, you're going to go to the slammer if you don't do this. There's going to have to be ways to both encourage the compliance, but also I think there may at some point be some sort of fining thing set up. I don't know at this point. I think part of that is the negotiations with the Secretary of State in terms of what she can do and what she can't. So I'll just leave it at that for the moment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Thorne. Representative Libby, I see your real hand. Welcome.
Thank you. Apparently still having technological glitches in various ways. But thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Reckett. In reference to the fines, I am seeing that it says for failure to file board member information, $100,000. For a first violation, $100,000, and for a second or subsequent violation, $300,000. So that seems pretty, yeah. That seems pretty clear to me, and pretty stiff. That seems like a pretty severe penalty. Can you speak to that? Is that your intention with this bill?
No, not at all. In fact, the things that I was looking at were talking about fines in the vicinity of $100. So I'm not sure where in statute you're finding that, or.
We're on Bill LD 1200, correct?
Right.
So I'm
Oh, the bill
looking
itself you're looking at.
at
Okay,
the
one
bill
second.
itself under section E on line 31 and beyond.
Thank you.
Unless there's an amended version that I should be looking at. And if so, I apologize and I'm happy to look for that.
Well, if there isn't, there should be, because I'm not in agreement with that either. So, and I'm sorry
Okay.
that I missed that. So
I have
will-
other concerns, but that was the one I wanted to question
Yeah.
today rather than speaking to it at work session.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that absolutely into account. It was never my intent to have fines of that magnitude. So that's an error in drafting that I didn't catch.
Okay, thank you so much. I look forward to hearing the resolution of what that should be instead.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Libby. Are there additional questions from committee members for the bill sponsor, Representative Galgay-Reckett? Seeing none, thank you very much, Representative Galgay-Reckett, for bringing the bill forward to your committee today. Greatly appreciated. I will now turn to people that have registered to testify. Both have registered to testify in support of LD 1200, and I would ask the committee clerk to please move over our Secretary of State, Shanna Bellows. And Madam Secretary, as soon as you join us from the attendee room, if you could activate your mic and unmute your mic and activate your video. Oops.
Sorry about that.
Welcome to the Judiciary Committee, Madam Secretary, and begin your testimony when you're comfortable.
Thank you, Representative Harnett, Senator Carney, members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Shanna Bellows. I am Maine's Secretary of State, Maine's first female Secretary of State in 200 years, and I'm here to provide testimony in favor of LD 1200. I want to thank the sponsor for bringing this forward. As Secretary of State, I'm a strong supporter of equity and inclusion. Gender parity in board representation is crucial to securing full gender equity in the workplace. There are some technical challenges to be resolved in order for our office to be responsible for enforcing, collecting, and reporting the required information. And I appreciate the sponsor's willingness to work through some of the details of the bill and potentially make some modifications. But I'm just going to share a little bit of information about what our office does and doesn't do and what might need to be amended or changed. So as drafted, LD 1200 would require our office to collect information from publicly held corporations to ensure they comply with the minimum number of women directors on the board of directors. Our office doesn't currently maintain a list of publicly held corporations or require corporations to designate whether they are publicly held or privately held. So we would first need to amend our filing procedures to collect the data that is requested before determining compliance. That is something that we absolutely could do with changes both in the online portal and in our software, as well as the reporting requirements issued to corporations. Additionally, as drafted, the bill would require our office to impose fines for violations of the law. This is one of the more challenging pieces of the bill, and certainly a philosophical conversation the committee should have. Corporations currently is a ministerial filing office. We have no regulatory authority over business corporations except to administratively dissolve entities for failure to file annual reports or certain other actions required by Title 13C, Section 1420. Corporate filings are simply reviewed by our office for completeness and sufficiency of filing fees. No legal review is done. There is no investigation of the accuracy of the information presented on filings. If we were to be charged with enforcing statutory requirements such as this one, our office would need to staff an investigator and a hearings officer to review and investigate compliance issues or complaints we might receive about compliance, and then provide the corporation with due process before imposing the required fines. Our office feels the most efficient way to collect director information would be to collect it on the annual report that is required by Title 13C, Section 1621. The annual report filing is required to maintain the good standing status of the corporation. The purpose of the annual report is to confirm the clerk of the registered agent and registered office address, and to declare publicly the people responsible for managing the corporation, officers, directors, or shareholders. To implement this requirement, we would need to amend Section 1621 to explicitly require the information to be collected on the annual report form. Transparency in this way might be a good first step toward gender equity in the event that the committee does not wish to expand the role of our office. Another matter we'd want to clarify is whether the requirement is just for domestic business corporations, or if we would require foreign corporations doing business in Maine to report required director information. If foreign corporations were to be included, just please note that Title 13C, Section 1505 currently limits the state's regulation of foreign corporations. So lastly, for our office to collect and maintain the required director information, we would need to make some changes to our internal filing software and database. We would need to redesign our online annual report filing interface and our backend database tables. And additionally, we would need to create new data reports. These are all things we absolutely could do and we'd be very willing to do in the interest of advancing the goal of gender equity. If the committee decides to move forward, we would like to discuss the deadlines for reporting of the information. We would want to make sure to push this out so that publicly held corporations can be made aware of the new requirements in advance of requiring them to do the reporting. I'm happy to work with the sponsor in this committee on any changes to this legislation moving forward.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Are there questions from committee members for our Secretary of State? I will call on people in the order in which I saw their hands. Representative Libby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here today, Secretary of State Bellows. Can I just ask, was the Secretary of State's office involved with the drafting of this bill in any way?
We were not, and we are happy to be involved in drafting of the amendment.
And follow up, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, you may, ma'am.
You said that there are some philosophical concerns. I would say they sound more practical concerns to me. Do you have any estimate? I realize there's no fiscal note on this bill at this point, but do you have any estimate for the cost to Maine taxpayers for the changes that you indicated would be necessary?
It depends on how the committee decides to proceed in terms of whether you require reporting about gender composition on boards or whether you require investigation and enforcement. So should you, and the philosophical question that I raised is whether the Bureau of Corporations, which is currently a ministerial bureau, should have investigation and enforcement authority. So that's the philosophical question that the legislature would need to determine.
Sure.
That would be more costly potentially because that would require new staff. We would need an investigator to investigate compliance. We would need at least one hearings officer to conduct administrative hearings to review, to allow those entities due process. With regards to changing the annual report, those costs would probably be more modest, particularly with the online portal and our database. We are always working on upgrading our technology to really try to stay current. 97% of our filers are using our online services rather than filing in person, which we're really excited about. So those costs would be more modest.
Thank you. Follow up, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Representative Libby.
Thank you. So Secretary of State Bellows, I would be specifically interested in any information about how about the costs as the bill is written currently, understanding that the amount of the fee, the penalties is not necessarily staying in the range that it currently is, but it seems that the bill is intended to penalize in one way or another those that are not in compliance. So I would assume that does mean some transitions in staffing and the other changes that you mentioned in your testimony. So that's certainly the range of costs that I'm interested in. Thank you.
Certainly, and we always provide a fiscal note upon request of the analyst, usually following the initial work session. Usually those fiscal notes are pursuant to committee votes and specific to the votes that advance, but we're happy to do a preliminary fiscal note.
Thank you. I would appreciate having a preliminary fiscal note for the work session.
Sure.
Thank you, Representative Libby. Representative Thorne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Secretary Bellows. I'm still learning a lot about gender issues. I've learned a lot in judiciary. So if someone identified as a female, but they were genetically a male, would that, do you think, count as a female board member if they just identified as female?
If someone is identifies as female, yes. If they are transgender female, yes. The committee may want to specify a non-binary or gender neutral option in reporting as well for people who do not identify as male or female.
And a follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Representative Thorne.
Thank you. And what type of documentation would that require if in other words, I was a genetic male and I identified as a female? What type of documentation would I need to present in order to possibly satisfy that?
None.
None.
Not just the spoken word?
Yes. Someone
Okay.
who identifies as female would be identified as female.
Okay, because we did discuss that with changing birth certificates for gender identity or gender markers. So I didn't know how that would play out, but you're saying just verbally saying I identify as a female would satisfy that requirement in this case, you think?
I think you can look to the bill itself as well, but again, transgender females are females.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Thorne. Representative Moriarty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary Bellows, you referred briefly to foreign corporations and domestic. Can you, for the benefit of the committee, just briefly distinguish the two for us?
So domestic corporations are, and I wish I had my director of corporations. So if I misspeak, I will correct her for the work session. But my understanding is that all corporations doing business in the state of Maine are required to file. Domestic corporations are those whose headquarters are within the United States, and foreign corporations are those who are headquartered outside of the United States.
If I can follow up, is there a distinction between corporations who are chartered in Maine as opposed to those which are chartered elsewhere in the US but do business in Maine?
I will get that information for you for the work session from our director of corporations.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Representative Moriarty. Are there additional questions for our Secretary of State? Seeing none, thank you very much, Madam Secretary. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to testify before the committee and look forward to seeing you or a member of your staff at our upcoming work session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next person that I have registered to testify in support of LD 1200 is Larry Danziger. Mr. Danziger, welcome to the Judiciary Committee. I failed to mention this to the Secretary of State, but we did mention earlier in the day that all persons testifying who are not sponsors will be limited to 3 minutes. So if you could consider that in your testimony, I would appreciate it. And begin, I'll hold up my phone when it's getting close to the time. But whenever you're comfortable, proceed with your testimony, sir.
Sure. Good morning. Members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is Larry Danziger. I live in Bangor. And I submitted some written testimony, which I'll mention a little bit and also go through a few other items that have been discussed. I was somewhat joking when I said that men have messed things up for a long time and women should have the opportunity to create their own messes, but I'm not entirely joking about that. I think having a more diverse group of people making decisions strengthens all decisions. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I'm supporting this bill. There are studies, the representative mentioned generally about that. There are studies that say adding women to boards of directors improves the functioning of those boards of directors. There are also studies, if you look hard enough online, that say that women don't make a significant difference. However, I did not find any studies that said women make things worse. So I think you can say that at the very least, adding women helps a little bit and perhaps quite a bit to that. And I want to focus a little bit on actual management of companies, because I think that does make a difference, and that when women have been added to those companies, they have made a positive difference in those situations. A question was brought up earlier asking, what if there's no one qualified? And I think that the answer to that is no matter what the qualifications are, they can be met, or qualifications are so narrow that they are not adequate qualifications to include women and to include other diverse groups in those boards of directors. So I also want to mention that I do think that very strongly that denying people membership in a particular entity, such as a board of directors, because of gender is a form of discrimination. And I doubt that the Maine Human Rights Commission has had any specific cases about that. Perhaps they have, but even if they haven't, perhaps it's time that they addressed situations like that. And when we're talking about public corporations, we're talking about corporations that do benefit in some way from their participation in the economy through that situation. One other suggestion, $100,000 may seem like a lot of money, but as a percentage of what very large corporations do for business, that may be a very small number. I would suggest a very small percentage rather than a specific number. Looking at the corporation saying,
Mr. Danziger
has $20 million that
Mr. Danziger, I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt, but you've gone over the 3-minute time. So if you could wrap up, I would appreciate it.
Yes, I'm about to wrap up. That that percentage be 0.001% of annual budget or something of that sort.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
You will have the opportunity to respond to questions from the committee, but we do need to limit testimony to get through all of our bills today. Are there questions from committee members for Mr. Danziger? Seeing none, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to submit your oral testimony and your written testimony as well. The committee greatly appreciates it. Thank you, sir. I will now turn to the attendee room. That ends the list of people that I had who registered to testify today, but I will ask if there are any persons in the attendee room who wish to speak in favor of LD 1200 to please indicate by raising your electronic hand. And seeing none, I would ask if there are any persons in the attendee room who would like to testify in opposition to LD 1200 to please raise your electronic hand. Again, seeing none, I would ask if there are any persons in attendance who would like to testify neither for nor against LD 1200 to please raise your electronic hand. And again, seeing none, having received the testimony of those present today wishing to testify, I now close the public hearing On LD 1200, I thank the sponsor, Representative Galgay Reckitt, for bringing the bill forward, and to all of those persons who testified today. Thank you very much. We will now move on to our next LD, and that is LD 1368, an act to require due process in asset seizure. And I will recognize the bill sponsor, Representative Andrews, to present the bill. Welcome, Representative Andrews, to the Judiciary Committee.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Senator Carney, Representative Hartnett, and honorable members of the Judiciary Committee, my name is John Andrews, and I represent the towns of Buckfield, Hebron, and Paris that make up District 73 in the foothills of Western Maine. I am here to testify in favor of my bill, LD 1368, an act to require due process in asset seizure. LD 1368 is a bill that seeks to help the average Mainer who may face a complex and expensive process of civil asset forfeiture. This bill would exempt United States currency with a total value of less than $100 and motor vehicles with a fair market value of $1,000 or less from asset forfeiture under the Maine revised statutes. This bill helps poor people and their families who might find themselves facing charges. The thresholds of $100 and $1,000 only work if the police are prohibited from seizing currency and vehicles at that low level. LD 1368 must stop this low-value property from even entering Maine's seizure forfeiture system. The process is too complex and expensive for property owners once their property enters the seizure forfeiture system. The median currency forfeiture between 2015 and 2019 was $1,670 in Maine. Property owners will rationally walk away from seizure of $99 in currency or a $999 vehicle because of the excessively high cost of getting it back. No one is going to hire a lawyer for $3,000 to try to get back a vehicle worth less than $1,000, even if the property owner is innocent. They may be innocent, but their property is still gone. Even if they are found guilty, a car worth less than $1,000 might be nothing to some, but it could be everything to a spouse who has to get to work and drop the kids off at school. Why should they have the family car seized forever for the sins of a single family member? This bill does not help criminals or drug cartels. If anything, it frees up police and prosecutors from processing paperwork on nominal asset seizures. It would free them up to chase and convict higher-level criminals. This bill does not change the deterrence inherent in Maine's drug and forfeiture law. It returns law enforcement's focus on this law's original intent of bringing down high-level drug traffickers, and we all wish them safety and success in that. I will be submitting an amendment in advance of the work session. You can read it below. Thank you for your time and commitment to public service.
Thank you very much, Representative Andrews, for bringing this bill forward and presenting it to the committee this morning. Are there members of the committee with questions for Representative Andrews? Representative Evangelos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, John.
Morning, John.
Just regarding the amounts, can you help me with what the current amounts are? I think you mentioned it, but it went by fast.
Less than $100 in currency and less than $1,000 for a vehicle.
Right, no, I got that part of it, but what are the current amounts by current law on what they can take anything and everything?
I believe so, yes.
So the husband has gotten in trouble with the authorities. It's drug related, which kicks off the asset forfeiture issue. And they have limited money and only one old car.
Basically, it's trying to protect families of nominal means, even if somebody does something that they shouldn't have. The family shouldn't be punished.
Yeah, people still got to get to work, and the wife shouldn't be left without transportation. Have you considered? We can talk about it in the work session, but have you considered even raising the limits a little bit?
I would absolutely be open to that. Part of the amendment gives prosecutors discretion, I believe.
Okay, we can talk about it at the session. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Evangelos. Representative Babbage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to Judiciary to my former seatmate, Representative Andrews. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I just, can you help me with this category of asset seizure? I haven't gone to the statute, but $1,670 as a median is a median for what exactly? What are we talking about?
A median for currency forfeiture.
Which would apply in what circumstances, Representative?
I'm not a lawyer. I'd have to explore that for the work session, but I believe it's what the person had on them at the time.
Okay, and the legal action would be brought about by whom?
Legal action regarding
the seizure. In other words, this is a remedy. This seizure is a remedy for what type of legal action? That's what I'm asking.
I believe it's drug offenses.
Okay, that's the part of the law we're talking about. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Babbage. Are there additional questions from committee members for the bill sponsor, Representative Andrews? Seeing none, thank you very much for bringing this bill forward to the Judiciary Committee today. We appreciate your presence and your testimony in presenting it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I will now turn to the attendee room. We did have one person signed up to testify neither for nor against, but I will first ask if there are any persons in the attendee room who wish to be heard in support of LD 1368. If so, please raise your electronic hand. Seeing none, I will ask if there are any persons in attendance who wish to testify in opposition to LD 1368 to please raise your electronic hand. And seeing none, I would ask if there are any persons in attendance who would like to testify neither for nor against LD 1368 to please raise your electronic hand. And again, seeing none, I will point out to committee members that there was testimony submitted by John Pelletier on behalf of the Criminal Law Advisory Committee. He had indicated an interest in testifying, but apparently he is not available. I would encourage the committee members to read that testimony. And with that, having heard from all present who wish to testify, I'd like to thank the bill's sponsor and close the public hearing on LD 1368. Our next public hearing is on LD 1499, an act to improve accountability in asset seizure and forfeiture reporting. And again, to present this bill, I bring back to the Judiciary Committee, Representative Andrews. Representative Andrews, seems like we just saw you, but proceed with your presentation of LD 1499.
Thank you, sir. Senator Carney, Representative Hartnett, and honorable members of the Judiciary Committee. My name is John Andrews, and I represent the towns of Buckfield, Hebron, and Paris that make up District 73 in the foothills of Western Maine. I'm here to testify in favor of my bill, LD 1499, an act to improve accountability in asset seizure and forfeiture reporting. The Institute for Justice is a nonpartisan and self-described national law firm for liberty. They gave Maine an overall D grade for forfeiture transparency and accountability. Yet another D in tracking seized property, an F for accounting of forfeiture fund spending, an F in statewide forfeiture reporting, a D for accessibility and transparency, and a final F for financial audits of forfeiture accounts. This is unacceptable, and we must do better. There will be testimony from special interests and lobbyists telling you that all is well, that it's satisfactory. If we are being honest, that is not true. It's just evidence that it's easier to maintain the entrenched status quo than to push forward and improve things for everyday people in Maine. According to a FOA request from the Institute for Justice, the Maine Drug Enforcement Agency, under the umbrella of the Maine DPS, seized 1.5 million between 2009 and 2014 at an annual average of 247,395. Senior research analyst for the Institute, Jennifer McDonald, stated, Maine pretty much is one of the worst in the country in terms of forfeiture reporting, just shy of those states that have no reporting requirements whatsoever. When asked if the state had recorded this money, the Office of Fiscal and Program Review Director Chris Nolan had no record of ever receiving reports. Through the reporter's own findings, as of October 2018, only one deposit had been made in the 10 years prior. That deposit was by the Maine Department of Public Safety for a grand total of $4,335. If there is no transparency and oversight, this invites seizures to be motivated by profit rather than crime fighting. Maine ACLU legal director Zach Hayden said it perfectly. Secrecy is anathema to the criminal justice system. You can't have the government have the power to take people's belongings, lock them up, and allow them to do it in secret. While Maine does have statute in place to provide transparency and accountability of civil asset forfeiture, the laws clearly aren't being followed. We can do better. We must do better. LD 1499 is a concept draft due to a joint rule that all model legislation would be printed as a concept draft. And I will fully admit that LD 1499 is a model piece of legislation from the Institute for Justice. But it's a model piece of legislation that has been fully adopted in Alabama, Arizona, Colorado, Kansas, and New Jersey. It's legislation that has been partially adopted in Illinois, Iowa, Nevada, North Dakota, Pennsylvania, Utah, and West Virginia. In fact, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Mississippi, New Hampshire, New Mexico, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia have instituted new reporting requirements for seizure and forfeiture over the last 7 years. That's 25 states. That represents half of the entire state governments in this country. And that list is made up of red states, blue states, and everywhere in between. Reforming requirements for accountability and asset seizure and forfeiture reporting for the 21st century is officially a national movement. And it's time that Maine join that list to protect her citizens' right and their private property. I would ask you to please vote ought to pass for LD 1499. It is a bill that is needed to demand transparency, accountability, and to protect the liberty and property rights of all Maine citizens. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Representative Andrews. Thank you for bringing this bill forward to the committee today. As you mentioned, this is a concept draft. Would you see this being placed in Title 15 as the earlier bill that you just introduced?
I do not have a legal background, so I would tentatively say yes, but I would have to consult lawyers that help me put this bill forward.
Okay. And do you anticipate that this bill would be in a Maine format, state of Maine legislative format before the work session?
I can absolutely make that happen, sir.
Thank you. Are there questions from committee members for the bill sponsor, Representative Andrews? Seeing none, I'll check again. Thank you very much again for bringing the bill forward and for spending time with the Judiciary Committee this morning. Greatly appreciate it.
It's been fun listening. Thank you.
In my electronic file, I have not seen anyone who has signed up to testify in any capacity on this bill. However, I will check the attendee room and ask if there are any persons in attendance who would like to be heard on LD 1499 to please raise your electronic hand. And seeing none, I would ask if there are any persons who would like to testify in opposition to LD 1499 to indicate so by raising your electronic hand. Again, seeing none, I would finally ask if there are any persons who wish to testify neither for nor against LD 1499 to please raise your electronic hand. And seeing none, having heard testimony from all those present wishing to testify, I now close the public hearing on LD 1499, and I thank the bill sponsor, Representative Andrews, for bringing the bill forward today. We did have another possibility of hearing a bill on forfeit an asset seizure, LD 1521, but we were not certain if the bill sponsor would be here today. So I do want to check if Representative Falkingham is here to introduce LD 1521, and not seeing him in the attendee room or in the panelist room. I will move on to the final public hearing on our agenda for this morning, and that is LD 923, an act to enact the Stop Guilt by Accusation Act. And I would welcome the bill's sponsor, Representative Sampson, to the Judiciary Committee to present LD 923 for us today. Welcome, Representative Sampson, and good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Nice to see you. Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, and members of the Committee on Judiciary. I am Heidi Sampson, representing the good people of House District 21, Alfred, Limerick, Shapley, Newfield, and Parsonsfield. I'm here to present LD 923, an act to stop guilt by accusation. Allow me to present you with an illustration to why I believe this bill is necessary. Please consider criminal justice reform. For example, consider a young adult a minority male who is accused of a heinous crime. This issue receives lots of news coverage. After all, it's juicy, salacious, newsworthy story. Obviously, the media has every right to cover the story as they see fit. If, however, this young man is acquitted, the story doesn't rise to the same newsworthy level for whatever reason, and the media fails to report it. This is actually quite dishonest and falls in the realm of the sin of omission. Without any intervention, this individual is now stigmatized for life and left to his own devices to explain away the cloud of suspicion. This has now destroyed his reputation, character, and dignity. He's continually faced with a cloud of suspicion which can prevent him from getting a job. He faces the real possibility of being an outcast in his society, permanently stigmatized, avoided, and shunned. This bill would allow him to submit an affidavit within 20 days of being acquitted to the representative media outlets who covered the story originally. In turn, these outlets will have 10 days to report in the same manner the time, place, and scale and magnitude of the original reporting. If a media outlet does not follow up in a timely manner, the victim can file a lawsuit in civil court against that media outlet to seek damages. This bill will allow the media to demonstrate integrity and honesty in their reporting. Out of respect for a human being's future, they should tell, quote, the rest of the story, end quote. In turn, this will restore the media to its original intent, a watchdog for the people. It will also stem the erosion of fundamental civil liberties when individuals are cast in a false light, which has resulted in destroying lives. I thank you for your consideration to this matter, and if we as people are concerned about justice, this is a vital piece. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Sampson, for bringing the bill forward to the Judiciary Committee today. Are there questions from committee members for the bill sponsor, Representative Sampson? Seeing none, again, thank you very much for bringing the bill. Representative Thorne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry about that. I was trying to do some research because I just saw something along the lines of this yesterday on the news where they showed an individual who was involved in the Capitol siege. And they showed video of him and said he was performing acts of violence and then left the story alone. So it was kind of like, they already went over that and found him guilty and showed you that right on TV and went on to the next story. So thank you, Representative Sampson, for bringing this forward. And I'm sure that there are many cases that would illustrate this. My one question is, when you present this going forward, is there opposition that you've encountered contrary to these that are outlined?
Well, I have, this was one of the bills that was submitted early on, and the media picked up on it and did a story basically taking some things out of context that I had stated. However, they dismissed this as being unconstitutional, and I would like to have that challenged. And apparently there's someone that has submitted, the Maine Press Association has also submitted testimony against this. However, I think this is an issue that deserves to be explored a little bit deeper.
Follow-up question, if I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Representative Thorne, go ahead.
Thank you. As far as First Amendment rights are concerned, and I don't think that I've ever encountered a situation where it's almost like forced First Amendment rights, where you're requiring somebody to speak on the opposite of what they've reported. And I didn't know if that came into play or you encountered any involvement around that issue.
Well, I think that was a discussion that I had with an individual in the media. But I think, it goes back to sort of the moral obligation. And that seems to have been eroded. And it's terrible to have to legislate morality, but to a great extent, that's what's happening on so many levels. And I don't understand why we spend time talking about all this social justice, these social justice issues, and yet here's an issue. I give you an example, and this is happening all over the country and in Maine. So here's an example where the media is actually complicit in an individual's life and the demise of their future. So where's the justice in that? So I would really appreciate this committee digging into this a little bit more and kind of examining it from more directions, and not be subject to listening to certain pressures. Let's look at all sides here and the issues that you all deal with in this committee on justice. Where does this fall into place? And is this relevant? And I would urge you all to really explore this.
Thank you for that, Representative Sampson. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Thorne, and thank you for your answer, Representative Sampson. Are there additional questions from committee members for the bill sponsor, Representative Sampson? Seeing none, thank you very much, Representative, for bringing LD 923 forward to the Judiciary Committee this morning. You are welcome to stay as a panelist if you would like for the remainder of the public hearing.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome. I will now turn to persons who have registered to testify in support of LD 923. And I will next recognize, and I hope I get your last name right, sir, Christopher Sevier, Esquire.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Let's see. Can you guys see me? Yeah, here we go.
Well, we did, and then we lost you.
Let's see. Maybe there we go.
Now we can.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much, members of the committee, for having me here.
I should, just before you start,
Yes, sir.
3-minute limit on testimony, and I'll
Yes,
let you
sir.
know when we're running out of time.
As a lawyer, I'll try to get that in there. So I'm going to talk very quickly. Feel free to ask me any questions that you might have. So basically, I went to Vanderbilt undergrad, Vanderbilt Law School, constitutional federal litigator, here in support of this bill. Effectively, this is a bill that promotes truth in reporting. It does, in fact, criminal justice reform, and it will do a lot to protect fundamental civil liberty interests. So basically what the bill says is, it says, going forward in the state of Maine, if a person is accused of a crime, if they're hauled before any kind of civil court or military tribunal, any kind of government body where they're accused of wrongdoing, if the plaintiff, the media has a fundamental right to report on the case in controversy pursuant to what's called the freedom of the press under the First Amendment. If the plaintiff or petitioner in the case end up getting less relief than they could have acquired or they were trying to get, and once the verdict is rendered, if the defendant in the action provides an affidavit to the media outlet within 20 days after the verdict is rendered, testifying to as what happened to the actual result in the case, the media outlet then has 10 days to do a follow-up publication in the same time, place, manner, and scale. And if they fail to do that, they can be subjected to a civil lawsuit where the plaintiff in the case could then seek $10,000 in statutory damages and attorney's fees. And so by way of an example to understand what this means in English, it would be if someone was accused of 50 felonies. Let's say Representative Joe Snuffy was accused, it was a political hit job. Someone falsely accused him of all this stuff. And the media reported on it and he was acquitted and he provided the affidavit. Let's say he was plastered on the front page of a publication. Well, the media should take reasonable steps to do a follow-up publication reporting on the outcome of that instead of burying it down on page 19 to where, the person is not really, the full story is not out there. The state has a compelling interest, a narrowly tailored compelling interest to not allow for what's called defamation in kind. This bill creates a new tort called that. The opposition, Representative Thorne raised a question about, is there opposition? The general opposition is that the bill in some general vague way offends the First Amendment. Self-serving entities float that argument. But the fact of the matter is that invasion of privacy, putting someone in a false light, and basically slandering them in a way by selective reporting is not protected under the First Amendment. The state has a further compelling state interest to enact this bill because it involves government institutions. We have a fundamental right, fundamental duty to protect the integrity of those institutions. Right now, there's really no accountability. There's no incentive to stop people who may disagree with each other for religious or political reasons to float and file false accusations against someone, knowing that the person's going to be acquitted. I'm sorry, I can't see that. The person's going to be acquitted, and but the media might not do a follow-up publication. And so in the instant case here, this would really help your constituents. It will very much protect fundamental rights. And Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if I'm over my time, but that's a very fast overview.
You are. Thank you very much, Mr. Sevier. And I forgot to remind people when they begin their testimony, we need to know your place of residence for our records. Could you indicate where you live, where you reside?
So we're called de facto attorneys general. We're federal litigators that litigate throughout the country, including in the circuit that Maine is located in. So, we're working in 42 states right now, but when we're in Maine, we're in Augusta. That's what we would be based out of when we're there.
Where do you reside, sir?
New York City.
Thank you. And I would open this up for questions from the committee, and I recognize my co-chair, Representative Carney. Senator Carney.
Thank you, Representative Harnett. Mr. Sevier, what is the street address of your Augusta, Maine office?
Well, so again, that would be my colleagues are the ones that have the all that kind of information. But when we are there in Maine to litigate, because Maine is part of it. The constitutional republic.
I'm not asking for a long.
To be honest with you, ma'am,
Just the street address, please.
I appreciate that, but in the instant case, we don't really like to give out that public information, but I can send it to you through writing.
Are you authorized to practice law in the state of Maine?
I'm authorized to practice law in the state of Maine if I appear pro hoc vici in a federal case in controversy.
So
Point
you're
of
not
order,
admitted
Mr.
to
Chair.
practice law.
Point of order, please.
You're not a member of the.
Point of order.
Would you let the senator finish her question, sir, and I will get to your
May
point.
I ask a point of order before she continues?
Representative Thorne, you may proceed.
In my entire time here at the Judiciary Committee, this is the only time that I have ever seen a member of the Judiciary Committee badger someone about their address and where they reside and a street address. And I don't understand why.
As I indicated, I failed to ask the witness or Mr. Sevier where he resided. That was my fault. So I asked.
But I understand that. I'm just making the point of order that there have been other witnesses that haven't stated where they live, nor have they provided a street address of where they reside. And I'm just wondering why this particular person that's given this testimony is being asked such specific questions.
I believe that he is identifying himself in his title as Christopher Sevier Esquire, which indicates he is an attorney. The Senator Carney was simply asking if he is registered, licensed as an attorney in the state of Maine. I consider that an appropriate question.
No, I beg to differ, Mr. Chair. She didn't simply ask that. She went into specifically asking an address. And I've yet to see another person providing testimony that's been required to provide a specific address other than a town. And I just was wondering why.
He represented that he was here on behalf of an organization with a place of business in the state of Maine. The inquiry was to where that business was located. I've ruled on your point of order. I've overruled it. Senator Carney, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that Mr. Sevier is not, he is not a registered member of the Maine Bar.
Thank you, Senator Carney. Does that conclude your questioning?
It does. Thank you.
I mean, can I respond to that?
Well, the question's been asked and answered, sir.
All right, okay, sure.
Representative Babbage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sevier, I'm looking at recourse here and trying to just make sure I understand what you're trying to achieve. I mean, I understand you did mention the term political hit job, and I do understand potential injustices that could happen. But regarding recourse, celebrities and public officials don't have the same slander and libel protection that normal folks do. But regarding slander and libel for the citizens that you're looking to protect here, if a member of the press writes something that is an editorial, I mean, even celebrities in Hollywood have been successful in going after the press for untrue accusations, which actually has surprised me. But there is a vehicle for that as far as factual corrections, or they wouldn't be corrections because they'd be a reporting of facts, but for a factual update. Is that what you're trying to achieve with this bill?
So in the instant case here, it's Representative Sampson's bill. I'm here to testify in support. What she is attempting to achieve, we would believe, would be several things. One would be, you talked about public figures, which were held to higher standards when it comes to defamation issues. So let me just first start by talking about the private individual, like your constituent, so to speak. Okay, so she gave an example of, let's say, like a 19-year-old African-American male is accused of rape, murder, and mayhem, and the media finds it to be in their economic interest to report on the case in controversy. And let's say that individual is acquitted a year later, but the media just says, you know, it's not in our interest to report on this. We have other things. Something else is happening right now, so we're not going to cover it. Well, that individual, that private citizen, when he tries to get a job, it might affect his personal life, his dating life. I mean, all aspects of his life, his fundamental civil liberties can be eroded and ruined by the selective reporting. It's important to note that the bill only involves cases and controversies where there's a government body who's overseeing some kind of accusation of wrongdoing. So, you know, we want to protect the integrity of those government bodies and not have them be used where people will float false based on the ends justify the means or some kind of malicious reasons to float a false report in order to then the media come in to selective report and not give the full story. It does invade privacy. It does cast people in a false light. And so the bill's intent is to promote truth in reporting, to protect fundamental civil liberties liberty interest, and to protect the integrity of government institutions. Prosecutors right now have also a lot of times in the North and the South, in red states and blue states, a lot of times prosecutors will go after people because they disagree with their religious and political worldview, and knowing that they're going to file something and the media is going to report on it and they're going to get exonerated and there's no follow-up publication. We need to deter that kind of practice from happening. Like the prime sponsor of the bill said, this bill really will promote a lot of criminal justice reform in a very bipartisan manner that will promote human flourishing. And that's the ultimate goal. And I'm sorry to give such a long answer, but that's a...
No, if I may, Mr. Chair, I'm concerned about the bill's trying to get at the motivation of what you're trying to correct, but it sounds like the bill is also requiring a process and a potential penalty for no wrongdoing. In other words, merely reporting the facts, you're saying is unfair if a person is accused, but then doesn't get the follow-up coverage on their acquittal. But as far as wrongdoing of reporting of the facts, that's not a requirement in order for this bill to be effective.
Selective reporting, respectfully submitted, selective reporting in a case in controversy where someone's been accused of something major is in and of itself a wrongful act. It's called defamation in kind. The bill can only be enforced, the statute can only be enforced if it's properly complied with. So let's say someone's accused of 50 felonies and they get acquitted and they don't provide the affidavit, it was reported on and they don't provide the affidavit in time. Well, they can't enforce the statute. But if someone is accused of wrongdoing, the media reports on it and they economically are benefiting off of that, they're profiteering off of the misery of someone else. And if they were acquitted and if they want the truth of the result published, they should have the fundamental right to go to the media outlet that's profiteering off of their misery and require them to do complete reporting. And failure to do that is self-evidently immoral. It's self-evidently wrong. It's certainly subversive to human flourishing. And it puts our integrity of our justice system in question because it allows for and incentivizes abusive process and malicious prosecution. It is a credible form. It turns the media outlets into slander machines is what it does. It's incredibly destructive. It erodes very real fundamental civil liberty interests.
Thank you, Representative Babbage. Representative Libby, I said I would call on you next, and I don't want you to have to keep your hand up all that time.
Thank you. I don't mind, but I do have a clarifying question to ask Mr. Xavier. I appreciate the point of order that Representative Thorne called. I think it was completely appropriate, and I would like a clarifying response from Mr. Xavier. I am brought to mind that we had a recent bill where we had out-of-state lobbyists advocating on behalf of it, and that bill passed out of our committee with a majority report ought to pass. And I did not hear a single question about a street address. during that public hearing. So I would like to hear some clarifying comments from Mr. Sevier in his response to the point of order. Thank you.
So, as a lawyer, if I'm not getting beat up, I'm not doing something right. So I'm used to it. I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about the merits of the bill before you. Maine is part of a constitutional republic. We do litigate in federal district court, including the circuit that Maine is a part of. This bill does involve fundamental First Amendment federal issues as well as state constitutional issues as well. I'm coming to you by way as a member of the Article 3 branch to help provide clarity, if you guys want it, in terms of whether or not Representative Sampson's bill that she's the primary sponsor of, if it's enacted, will it survive judicial review? The question for you guys is to determine whether or not it would help your constituents and what would benefit them by protecting their fundamental civil liberties. We do not give out our public address. We do go to Maine. We will be there for other bills. We have lots of bills in lots of states, and we love our partners in Maine. We partner with a lot of groups from fighting human trafficking, child advocacy centers, and so forth. But we really don't want to get off topic of other than, do you think this would help your constituents? Do you understand the merits of the bill? And I'm here to testify as to whether the bill would survive judicial review in federal district court if it was enacted. And the answer is yes, it would, because slander, basically putting someone in a false light, those are not protected forms of free speech. And so that's a quick answer. I basically just want to keep going back to the merits. And this is politics. We're supposed to gig someone. And I always take it as a compliment if someone gets off topic, because if they want to talk about me or something, then they can't defend, they don't have a very good argument to oppose the bill. I would respectfully submit. So I take it from that way. So
thank you, Mr. Sevier. And I would appreciate an invitation for Mr. Sevier to the work session.
Thank you, Representative Libby. Representative Babbage, is your hand still up or is it residual?
I apologize, Mr. Chair. No, it is not.
It's okay. Thank you. Representative Thorne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sevier, you mentioned politics. Does this disproportionately affect any political affiliation more than another in your experience?
To be honest with you, based off of our monitoring these kinds of situations dealing with malicious prosecution, I was a prosecutor for the military and for the federal government as well. Malicious prosecution is a serious problem. It can definitely cut both ways. If you have let's say a prosecutor that favors Republican Christian ideology, or you have a prosecutor that favors, LGBTQ leftist ideology, they might have incentives in some ways to bring false claims against someone that maybe have just kind of tenuous probable cause. There might be a very low reason why they can get away, justify bringing the case, knowing that the media is going to report on it and they can hurt that person's career. They can hurt their personal life. They can erode their fundamental liberties because there's no real form of accountability. Like one of the representatives said, is it wrong just to report on the facts? And the answer is yes, if they selectively report and if it involves a government entity. There's room for an enormous amount of abuse that cuts across party lines. And so basically, this isn't about Republican or Democrat. This is about right or wrong. And this is about protecting the integrity of our justice systems. It's about protecting people that can't defend themselves. I mean, if I'm not getting attacked in the media, I'm not doing something right. That's the way I feel about that. But there's a lot of people, and I can defend myself, but there's a lot of people who are like, back to the example that the representative gave, Representative Sampson, where she referred to some minor, some 19-year-old kid gets accused of something. The media reports on it. He's got no voice, and so this will really, protect them. So,
thank you, Mr. Sevier. I appreciate that answer, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for indulging my question. And we'll save the detailed ones for the workshop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Thorne. Are there other committee members with questions for Mr. Sevier? Seeing none, thank you very much for bringing your testimony to the Judiciary Committee today. We appreciate your attendance, sir.
Thank you, members. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
That is all that I had signed up, registered in testifying in support of LD 923, but I do want to see if there are any members in the attendee room who are here to testify in support. of LD 923? And if so, if you could please raise your electronic hand. And seeing none, I will now turn to those who registered to testify in opposition to LD 923. And I would first recognize Judith Meyer of the Maine Press Association. Welcome, Ms. Meyer, to the Judiciary Committee again. It's good to see you. And as soon as you are ready, begin your testimony. I will remind you that we are on a 3-minute clock today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Carney, Representative Harnett, and members of Judiciary. My name is Judy Meyer. I live in Auburn, and I'm a member of the Maine Press Association, here to testify in opposition to this bill. This bill seeks to legislate how news outlets cover police and court news. It is unquestionably unconstitutional. And that idea that government can dictate how newspapers cover news has been tested right up to the US Supreme Court. And in every case, the media has been the victor, in every case. This bill asserts that media outlets in Maine fail to provide thorough editorial attention to criminal and civil cases. It requires mandatory follow-up stories and mandates that mugshots be removed if the accused is acquitted. Newspapers in Maine already follow cases. We publish follow-up stories. We have processes in place to consider requests to remove mugshots. LD 923 is the product of a bill mill and uses language replicated in multiple other states across the country at the urging of Special Forces of Liberty, an organization that conceals its origins and supporters. And everywhere that this has been introduced, it has failed based entirely on its unconstitutional directives. In Rhode Island, the bill was withdrawn by its sponsor. It died in Mississippi, Montana, and New Hampshire. Each soundly rejected it. But no matter its roots, this bill attacks the First Amendment, which guarantees without hesitancy that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. It also attacks Maine's Constitution, which in Article 1 makes clear that no laws shall be passed regulating or restraining the freedom of the press. Responsible news organizations adhere to ethical standards that promote responsible journalism, and members of MPA follow the Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics, which says, in part, ethical journalism strives to ensure the free exchange of information that is accurate, fair, and thorough. An ethical journalist acts with integrity. Additionally, news organizations have practices in place to respond to community concerns, as evidenced by the evolution of editorial practices. And it is precept in news organizations to follow individual cases through to completion, from entries to police blotters to outcomes in court proceedings. The New England First Amendment Coalition has also submitted testimony in opposition to this bill, although it does not show up in the portal just yet. And that testimony is 2 pages full of case law and statutory references that show and demonstrate that this idea has been tested time and again and has proved to be unconstitutional in every case. When asked about this bill, the policy director at the ACLU of Maine said that government should never be telling journalists how to do their jobs. Accountability for ethical and responsible journalism must come from a dialogue between journalists and the communities they cover. It cannot come from a coercive and unconstitutional government mandate. This bill is indefensible, and we ask you to reject this move against a free press. Thank you, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Meyer. Thank you for your testimony before the Judiciary Committee today. Are there questions from committee members for Ms. Meyer? And I must admit, I was distracted in a chat on the folks testifying, so I don't know whose hand up was first. Whose hand was up first? I'm going to call on Representative Evangelos.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My hand was up first. If it wasn't, I'd admit it and defer.
Thank you, Representative.
Ms. Meyer, thank you. You've already answered my first question. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of the press, and that came into my mind immediately. But in a hypothetical situation, you know, taking into account some of the testimony we've heard, if a newspaper has acted with malice or irresponsibly, there is a remedy through the courts, right? I mean, newspapers do get sued, right?
They do get sued, but I will tell you that is a very, very rare event in Maine.
But there is a remedy through the courts. And the newspapers aren't, besides their First Amendment rights, if they cross the line and libel or slander somebody, there is a remedy, and you're not protected by any immunity around that, are you?
We are not protected. You're correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Evangelos. Representative Thorne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess my question is procedural. If this bill is unquestionably unconstitutional, why are we going through this public hearing? And why is this bill even present if it's been deemed to be unquestionably unconstitutional? Because we wouldn't pass any laws or suggest bills that weren't constitutional. Am I correct in that? At some point, somebody would, in the revisor's office, would determine that it was unconstitutional and wouldn't allow it to go forward?
All bills, I assume this is a question to the chair, and I will try to respond to it, Representative. All bills requested by legislators to be printed, is my understanding, are printed. The revisor's office is not in a position to say this is unconstitutional. We are not going to print it. That might come out in an analyst's review of the legislation if there are constitutionality issues raised in a public hearing or in a work session, but I certainly would not want a legislator's right to introduce legislation to be thwarted at the first step. What you're hearing is testimony from some people who are presenting today that believe this statute, if enacted, would be ruled unconstitutional.
Okay, and a follow-up, if I may?
Is this another question to the chair or a question to the witness that just testified?
Oh, well, it may be. She seems to be very up on Constitution, so she may be able to answer it. If not, I would appreciate it if you did, because the parallel that I draw is between the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. And this one pertains to the First Amendment that says government may not pass any law restricting or mandating. And yet the Second Amendment says the right to bear arms, that right shall not be infringed. But yet we do have laws that infringe upon the right to bear arms. So I didn't know if this may be a parallel where in certain cases that right may be infringed upon with laws that are deemed to be at the benefit of society. Would that be a parallel I could draw?
I think we're getting a little off point, but let me just respond that if we have laws in effect in the state of Maine that violate the Constitution of the state of Maine or the Constitution of the United States, they would be so challenged, and it would be up to the courts to rule on them.
Okay.
To rule on that
Thank you.
challenge.
I appreciate your clarity and help on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional questions for Ms. Meyer? Seeing none, and I just want to make sure I didn't miss any real hands, because I know some people don't have access to the electronic hand, and seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Meyer, for presenting your testimony today. We appreciate your time and attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next person that I have, next and last person that I have signed up to testify is also testifying in opposition to LD 923, and that is Michael Kebeda. Mr. Kebeda, as soon as you are ready to testify, I will remind you, although you know very well, we have a 3-minute clock, so proceed when you're comfortable, sir.
Thank you, Representative Harnett, Senator Carney, and members of the committee. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Kebeda, and I'm Policy Counsel for the ACLU of Maine. I am here to oppose this bill because it would threaten to erode our core constitutional freedoms. Free speech is the heart of our democracy. And for this reason, the First Amendment creates a wide berth for the press and their associated speech. The ACLU of Maine, like the sponsor of this bill, also recognizes the importance of people's presumption of innocence and how media exposure of people who have not received a sentence in a court of law may dramatically alter their image in the public eye. For example, reporters and political demagogues rushed to convict the Central Park Five in the court of public opinion, though it turned out that they were not guilty and that their convictions had been obtained through coerced testimony by the police. Unfortunately, this bill runs antithetical to the fundamental principles of our democracy, which include protection of the integrity of the press. There are already well-established laws in place that prohibit defamation, but those laws are the exception to the general principle that in a democracy, the people are the ultimate arbiters of the truth or value of information about matters of public concern, and not the courts. We can all do a better job of educating ourselves and our children to be critical consumers of news media, and we can and should demand that reporters uphold the high standards of their profession. As the United States Supreme Court recognized in 1964, one of the things that unites us as a people is our profound national commitment to the principle that debate on public issues should be uninhibited, robust, and wide open. We urge you to vote ought not to pass. And finally, I'd like to turn the committee's attention to LD 563, where we were on the other side of the Maine Press Association, where we and a group of very diverse stakeholders found a better solution to the very problem that this bill seeks to solve. Happy to go into the details of that bill in question and answers. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kebeda, but we will focus our attention today on LD 923, the bill that's in front of the committee. But thank you for your time, as always. Are there questions from committee members for Mr. Kebeda? I'm just going to check for real and virtual hands, and I do not see any. Thank you very much for your time and testimony. I didn't see you, Representative Libby. I apologize. I don't know if your camera was off for a second, but you may proceed.
Sorry about that. I have kiddos making their lunch in the kitchen, so I keep my
What are they
camera
having? Something good?
Annie's mac and cheese. Can't beat it.
That's good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here, Mr. Kebede. Another point regarding the freedom of the press is that in it not being absolute, is that defamation in kind, invasion of privacy, casting someone in a false light are not forms of protected speech. So what would your thoughts be surrounding that issue with regards to this bill?
That's a great question, Representative Libby. Unfortunately, when rights exist, only those well-heeled enough, only those wealthy enough to enforce those rights, to get those rights recognized in court, enjoy those rights. And most of the people that it sounds like Representative Sampson wants to protect with this bill are low income. And so even if that person has been cast in a false light, even if that person has been defamed through news reporting about their active court case, in the overwhelming majority of cases, that person cannot get a court to protect that right for them. And so this bill, in my view, even if passed, even if it was found to be constitutional, which we don't think it would be, would probably not serve to protect the rights that Representative Sampson wants to protect with this bill. Because the people who are generally speaking accused of crimes don't have the resources or the time or the money or the status or the privilege to enforce their rights in court. And so probably a better way, absolutely, probably a better way of protecting those rights is to restrict the kinds of information courts can share with the public and the kinds of information the state can share with the public about who's been accused of what crime.
Thank you, Representative Libby. Thank you for your response, Mr. Kebeda. Are there additional questions for Mr. Kebeda? Seeing none, again, thank you very much for your time today. The committee greatly appreciates it. I would now, those are all of the persons that I had registered to testify on LD 923, although I do see a question from Representative Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That last question piqued my interest. I'm wondering if I could ask for the presence of Christopher Sevier to come in and I'd like to ask him one more question if I could.
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
I would ask the committee clerk to move Mr. Sevier back as a panelist. Proceed, Representative Hagan.
Thank you very much. I don't see Mr. Sevier.
He's there, trust me.
Okay. So the question that was just asked piqued my attention. So I thought I was quick enough to be able to type this one. Another point that the freedom of the press is not absolute defamation in kind, invasion of privacy, casting someone in a false light are not forms of protected speech. I was curious as to your thoughts on that. Very same question that was asked to the last person.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you know, like the parallel of the Second Amendment's not absolute either. Freedom of the press is very important. It's very important that we protect that, but it is not absolute. This bill is really important to one of the things that the lady who testified in opposition said is that this bill will require all mugshots to be taken down, all reporting on all cases, but that's not the case. This bill concerns when it gives power to individual who's a subject of news stories, where the media is profiteering off of that individual. If that individual wants the media to do a complete story on what happened, on the outcome, and if they qualify for it, if a person's accused of a felony and they get convicted of it, they can't enforce the statute. But if they're exonerated, if they're acquitted, if they're pled out to nothing, they can go back to the media and that individual, this bill gives power to the individual constituents who've been accused of stuff to go back to him and say, I'm demanding that you not engage in selective reporting in a matter that involves me being accused of wrongdoing before a government body. And so in that case, for the state legislature to require that the media outlet and that narrow circumstance to do a full, follow-up publication so the full story is out there, is not unconstitutional. That would definitely, defamation in kind, invasion of privacy, putting someone in a false light, those are not forms of protected speech. And you guys have a compelling governmental interest to protect your citizens from being bullied and abused. I mean, the media outlets are profiteering off of this, off of their reporting anyway. And as the other opposition said, she said that we're not sued very often. And so, yeah, I mean, in the instant case here, there's not going to be a lot of lawsuits. They might do the follow-up publication on their own, but if it's maliciously brought, if it's clearly a political hit job, if it's abusive process, if someone is getting off topic, right? If they're engaging what's called the ends justify the means practice, which happens all the time, then this will protect that individual. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Hagan. Representative Thorne, is this an additional question for the witness who is being called back a second time?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you for appearing today, Mr. Sevier, and providing your testimony and taking time out of your day to help us with this. We appreciate it.
Yes, Representative, glad to do it. Just trying to provide, lawyers know just enough to be dangerous on any topic, but when you litigate First Amendment issues, and we do multiple federal district courts around the country, we have some insights. These matters are complex. They're not simplistic. Yeah, I would respectfully submit that, we see eye to eye with the ACLU on many topics, but there's a lot of times we disagree. Our motivation is not for donations. It's not for credit. We don't care about any of that. We just want to promote human flourishing. We're just thinking about your constituents, and we're just trying to provide you guys with some ammo so you can, if you vote in favor of the bill, you can understand that it is constitutional and it will work, and you will enable human flourishing. And at the end of the day, it's going to really help the media outlets because because there's no accountability on them, they've really eroded their integrity and trustworthiness by engaging in these kind of tactics. It's pretty clear that they do that. And it's really harming the quality of the profession. So the best thing that can happen for media outlets is for this bill to be enacted. And thank you so much for taking up this matter that's not simplistic.
Yeah, if I may ask follow-up, Mr. Chair.
One more follow-up, and then we're about to close the hearing, sir. But go ahead.
Is there a time limit that I'm missing?
You may proceed with your follow-up question, Representative Thorne.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sevier, do you see any way that this bill would harm a media outlet by its requirement or be detrimental?
I don't really think so. I mean, the only thing I can think about would be, you know, if they might feel inconvenienced with having to do a follow-up reporting. Maybe there's a tornado going on at the time during the 10-day threshold where they got to do a follow-up reporting, and they'd prefer to cover this other thing. But if they decide to cover a case in controversy, which they have the right to do, and if that person is then exonerated or acquitted, then because they're profiteering off of that person's misery or misfortune, having, you know, been wrongfully accused, if you will, then they, you know, even if they feel like it's a little bit inconvenient, they should be required to do this follow-up publication. I think it's going to help them because it's going to make prosecutors and media outlets think twice before they cover a case in controversy. If it's clearly a political hit job, you know, then they would be less likely to cover it. So but if they do decide to cover something and the person is exonerated or acquitted, and that individual does take the necessary steps to enforce the statute, then yes, they should be required to do it, but follow up with this. But I don't think it will hurt them furthermore, because I think it's going to promote truth in reporting. And I think the press needs to be known for not advancing fictitious narratives for some kind of purpose that they personally believe in, but just neutrally putting the facts out there. It's very important to safeguard the integrity of our democracy and justice systems, you know, government systems in general.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me that question.
You're very welcome, Representative Thorne, and thank you, Mr. Sevier. At this point, I will ask again if there are any persons in the attendee room who wish to testify in opposition to LD 923 to indicate. Seeing no one, I would ask if there are any attendees who wish to testify neither for nor against LD 923 to so indicate by raising their electronic hand. Seeing none, having heard and received testimony from those present today, I now close the public hearing on LD 923. That concludes the committee's work for the day, as the bill sponsor on 1251 has not appeared. So I would thank the committee members for their work today. Appreciate trying to get through this by the deadline we had of 12:30. It's been a long work week for all of the committee members. I thank you for your time and attention. I thank all of those who came and testified before the committee. I would remind the committee that we meet again on Tuesday at 9 a.m. And we have a full day of public hearings in the morning, a full morning of public hearings, and then work sessions in the afternoon. And if there are no other matters that committee members want to raise at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
And look at that, we're ahead of schedule.
I apologize. I have a quick question, Mr. Chair.
And
Yes,
Sue has a question too.
My question is, I apologize. I was in state and local government presenting a bill, but we're not hearing, obviously time-wise, the asset seizure bills today.
We heard every bill that was on our calendar.
Okay, I just missed that when I was in state and local. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. And committee clerk?
Yes, thank you very much. Just a reminder for those that missed the work session on Wednesday to make sure you get your votes in, please.
Thank you for that reminder. And as always, and I sometimes forget, Peggy, is there anything you would like to tell the committee, share with the committee before our week comes to an end?
Well, thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Very much appreciated. So again, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion made and seconded and approved. Thank you all very much. Enjoy your weekend. Get out there. I think it's a beautiful day, although I can't see from here. And we will see you on Tuesday. Take care.
Happy weekend, everybody.
All right. Have a good one, folks.
See everybody next week.
Bye.